Wait, haven't we done this before? I have the strongest feeling that we've done this before.
Feeling
Anyway.
very deja vu-y.
Anyway, hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live discussion where we will be talking about time loops. There are 20 pieces from film and television that I have comprised a list by consulting my friend the internet and coming up with the list of 20 definitive time loop stories. I wanted to find pieces that sort of fit the traditional idea of someone repeating the same events over and over again, because some of the lists were a bit iffy on what a time loop means. But yeah, so I tried to stick with that theme. Some of these entries on this list vary a little bit from that theme, but I tried to stick mostly with that. Anyway, I am joined here by two very special guests. First, joining me, Mr. Agent Williams down there, Don Williams. Don, thanks so much for finally getting through the list and joining us here to talk about these entries.
Yeah, listen, man, you did not make this an enviable task. Okay, I'll be honest with you. Some of this stuff, I was like, why would they do this? But for the most part, I had fun with it. Time loops, when told well, can be very compelling stories. And when not told well, we are going to get into that one.
And also looping with us today, this way here, Mr. Darrin.
How's it going? Yes, very excited to be here. I have turned on my arc generator. I have moved towards a subspace field. I've played with some alien artifacts, and just for good measure, I was mean to random strangers. So I think I've done all the things necessary to prepare for what is our traditional time loop. Honestly, I have been so excited to get into this. And much like Don just mentioned here, getting into any kind of trope is always exciting because you get to see what the rules for them are, who does it well, who doesn't do it well, who leans on a trope so much they knock it over, and who actually lifts it up with some new innovative ideas. So I'm real excited to get into this and really see where everybody else has put some of their thoughts.
All right, cool. So let me get into the format of how we're going to do this video. We've done this several times before. It's always a lot of fun. It's been a really long time since we did it last time. So so basically how this is going to work, all three of us have our own individual list where we ranked all 20 of the entries on this list. We don't know how the other people rank the stuff, which is going to be fun. So we're going to take turns, one at a time, introducing the bottom entry on the list, which will become our collective list. And actually, I should have talked about this before we started, but Darrin, are you able to write out what our collective list is? Because I can't plug in my keyboard while I'm recording.
I certainly can. I have a pen. I have paper. I can do this with us. It will be my pleasure. Thank you very much.
So you will have to be our record keeper on what our definitive top 20 lists. So basically, we each take turns naming the bottom thing on our list, and that will officially become that piece's entry on our collective list. So let me name the 20 pieces that we will be ranking here today. If I can bring that up. Okay, so in terms of movies, we got 1993's Groundhog Day. I mean, obviously. We got 1998 Lola Run, a last-minute correction. We got 2011 Source Code, 2014's Edge of Tomorrow, 2016 Arc, ARQ, all in capital letters. 2017's Happy Death Day, 2017's Before I Fall, 2018 The Endless, 2020's Palm Springs, and 2021's Boss Level. Now, in terms of TV episodes, we have Cause and Effect, which is season 5, episode 18 of Star Trek Next Generation. We also have Monday, which is season 6, episode 14 of The X-Files. Déjà Vu, which is season 5, episode 16 of The Outer Limits. Window of Opportunity, season 4, episode 6 of Stargate SG-1. And Those We Left Behind, season 4, episode 6 of Fringe. All the Time in the World, season 3, episode 4 of Dark Matter. Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, season 1, episode 7 of Star Trek Discovery. Here I Go Again, season 3, episode 11 of Legends of Tomorrow. And As I've Always Been, season 7, episode 9 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And we also have a season of television, Russian Doll, season 1. So those will be, that's our list. Those are going to be the pieces we'll be ranking. Now, this is the first time we've done these things before, but usually it's never crossed mediums before. Usually it's all movies, all TV episodes. This is the first time we're sort of combining the list. So I did find that a bit difficult. It's like almost apples and oranges trying to compare them. I'm wondering if you guys had the same sort of issue trying to wrap your brain around ranking an episode of television compared to a season of television compared to a movie.
I actually found it kind of an interesting, because again, once you learn the rules of the trope, it's really seeing who does it and who brings something to it. And there were definitely some interesting combinations with that. The one real interesting one is, of course, to me, Russian Doll, which we'll get into later, is because it's kind of a season. It's much longer than anything else. And so in some ways, that really gives it a different pacing than a movie versus a TV show. But what do you think, Don?
Yeah, I didn't have that difficult of a time with the whole cross medium thing. It was more so, like I said, for one, the fact that the list is so extensive, and then two, like I said, when it's good, it's good, and when it's not, oh boy.
The for me, it's like, and I think this is gonna show. We're gonna probably, our list is gonna vary based on, especially for the episodes, it's gonna probably based on if we're familiar with this show or not before, because that makes a difference. Because there's some episodes I've seen the show for, but you guys haven't, or some you've seen the show for and I haven't. So that might be a little variable in there, because some of these are part of a serialized story. It's like an episode part of a serialized story, which affects it. But no, I still thought I still wanted to focus on all sorts of time loops, and there weren't really enough movies to do it. So I thought, well, include some episodes. Now, I will admit there were more episodes of TV I kind of just left off the list that I wasn't interested in covering, like Supernatural or freaking Angel or Xena Warrior Princess. I was just like, I'm sorry, not interested in those shows, so I'll leave them off.
To be fair to the audience, Run Lola Run has jumped in, replacing an episode of television, specifically Buffy the Vampire Slayer's Life serial, which I was more than happy to get off of the list. It was going to be near the bottom for me anyway. So, but yeah, I wasn't a big Buffy fan, so I wasn't into the serial, and some stuff hurts. Some stuff hurts when you watch it.
See, the reason why I kicked it off wasn't necessarily because it wasn't my personal feelings on it. And yes, it was at the bottom of my list. It was a clear bottom. It was the only. Don, you said you had problems with getting through some of these. For me, that was the only one I had an issue with getting through. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. But that's not the reason why I kicked it off. The reason why I did is because I hadn't seen it before I made this list, so I was just trusting on what I read in the internet that this was a time loop episode, but the time loop story only consists of like 5 minutes
of
the episode.
If that, yeah.
And so that's not, to me, that doesn't really qualify. And then I had eliminated Run Lola Run because it wasn't a traditional time loop in the sense. You could think of it as like just what if scenarios or what if things happen differently. But when someone brought it up, I'm like, actually, no, that fits a time loop more than life serial. So let's get rid of it and bring that in. But yeah, because I didn't include Doctor Strange because that's a much better version. But
it's only 5 minutes at the end of the film.
Yeah, it's only like 5 minutes at the end of the film. So exactly. So if I'm not going to include Doctor Strange, why should I include this Buffy episode? And
I'm with that.
Also, I gotta say, like, I had never seen an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in my life. I had decided not to watch that show, and after watching that episode, I reaffirmed that I made the correct life decision by never watching that show.
I think you chose a good breadth of shows of lower budget, higher budget, television across multiple genres to kind of get a good feel on how people do things. So no, I think your choices work.
Okay, so anyway, before we start our ranking these things, I had comprised, I gathered up some stats on the 20 entries on this list and how they use time loops. So I'm just going to quickly run through them just because I found them very interesting. Okay, so first off, we got entries where the time loop was caused by a natural or supernatural phenomenon. That includes Edge of Tomorrow, The Endless, Palm Springs, and Cause and Effect. We have entries where the time loop where the time loop's cause wasn't explained. They never bothered explaining how the time loop happened. We have Groundhog's Day, Run Lola Run, Happy Death Day Before I Fall, Monday, and Russian Doll. Entry where the time loop was caused by a scientific device. We have, which Darrin went into in his intro. We have source code, arc, boss level, deja vu, window of opportunity, and those we left behind. All the time in the world, magic to make the sanest man go mad. Here I go again, and as I've always been. So it seems like that's the more popular cause of the time loop. Entries where the time loop was intentionally caused by a person. We have source code, window of opportunity, and those we left behind in magic to make the sanest man go mad. Entries where a person must be stopped in order to stop the time loop. We have source code, Happy Death Day, Monday, window of opportunity, and those we left behind in magic to make the sanest man go mad, and as I've always been. Entry where the time loop must be stopped by becoming a better person, which is a trope that Palm Springs made fun of. Anyway, we have Groundhog's Day, Happy Death Day, Before I Fall, and Russian Doll. Entries where the time loop must be stopped by a scientific discovery. We have Palm Springs, Boss Level, Deja Vu, All the Time in the World, Here I Go Again, and As I've Always Been. Entries where only one person remembers each loop. We have Groundhog's Day, Source Code, Edge of Tomorrow, Happy Death Day, Before I Fall, Boss Level, Monday, and Here I Go Again. Entry where 2 or 3 people remember each loop. We have Arc, Palm Springs, Deja Vu, Window of Opportunity, All the Time in the World, Magic to Make the sanest man go mad, and As I've Always Been. And entries where no one remembers each loop. We have Run Lola Run, Cause and Effect, and actually Arc as well, but that's a whole nother thing. Anyway, entries where everyone starts to vaguely recall each loop. The longer it goes on, we have Cause and Effect and Monday. Entries where the loops are finite and they're going to run out and kill everyone unless it can be stopped first. We have Edge of Tomorrow, Source Code, Boss Level, Deja Vu, and As I've Always Been. Entries where each loop only resets when the main character dies. We have Run Lola Run, Source Code, Edge of Tomorrow, Arc, Happy Death Day, The Endless, Boss Level, Cause and Effect, Monday, Here I Go Again, As I've Always Been, and Russian Doll. Entries where each loop resets when the main character goes to sleep is just Palm Springs. Entries where the time loop resets after the day is over, Groundhog's Day, and Before I Fall. Entries where that begin while the time loop is already in progress. We have Arc, the Endless Pulse, Palm Springs, the Boss Level, Cause and Effect, Monday, and Those We Left Behind, All the Time in the World, and As I've Always Been. Entries that begin before the time loop starts, we have Groundhog's Day, Run Lola Run, Source Code, Edge of Tomorrow, Happy Death Day, Before I Fall, Déjà Vu, Window of Opportunity, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, Here I Go Again, and Russian Doll. Entries where the time loop has lasted several decades, we have Groundhog's Day, The Endless, and Palm Springs, which apparently I've done some research. The official number for Groundhog's Day is 33 years. He was trapped in the time loop. And for Palm Springs, the writers and producers officially confirmed that it's been 40 years since he was trapped in the time loop. And in the movie The Endless, there's several time loops. One features a guy from like the Civil War era, so we assume he's been trapped in that time loop for centuries. So that's definitely the longest one. Hold on, and let me bring this back. All right, so entries that have lasted several years, Edge of Tomorrow and Arc. Entries where the time loop has lasted several weeks or months, Source Code, Happy Death Day, Before I Fall, Boss Level, Cause and Effect, Monday, Déjà Vu, Window of Opportunity, All the Time in the World, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, Here I Go Again, As I've Always Been, and entries where the time loop has lasted just several hours, Run Lola Run. Entries where someone references the movie Groundhog's Day. We have Happy Death Day, Before I Fall, Boss Level, Here I Go Again, and As I've Always Been.
And Window of Opportunity does at the end.
Does it? Oh, I missed that one.
And I had missed it at first, but he does. He goes, "What are you going to be, the king of Groundhog Day?"
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, it was one of those bummer moments because it didn't need that at all. Anyway, well, I'll get into it when we talk about that episode. But yes, there is a reference.
And of course, I was going to mention the Buffy episode before I took it off the list because that referenced several things. It referenced Groundhog's Day, it referenced Cause and Effect, it referenced the X-Files episode.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And let's see, what was it? The Legends of Tomorrow is the only other one that references Cause and Effect on the list, I think.
Oh, does it? Did it reference Cause and Effect too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, any general thoughts on those stats, which I personally found a bit interesting.
Honestly, I wish I was writing them all down so I get the numbers on each because, like I say, going over this, you start getting those rules. I started putting things like single looper, multiple looper, starts, mid loop, starts pre-loop, starts, I was doing those through all my notes because, there are these obvious reoccurring themes. And then it gets interesting when they start mixing all of those up. So, it's kind of cool. Again, how common the trope really is, but how many variations you can get on it still.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy, especially when you think about, the multiple loops and like how long people have been in those loops and, when they're made aware of how long they've been in the loops. That's, the realization on the characters' faces, like, wait, what, we've been doing this how long? So, yeah, that's
yeah. I mean, as I was looking at the sets, the interesting thing is that Cause and Effect and Run Lola Run are the only ones where the people aren't aware that no one's aware they're in a loop. Every other one, there's at least one person who knows that they've been stuck in the loop the whole time.
Well, no, Cause and Effect, they do figure it out.
Yeah, they have a vague impression, but it's not like Groundhog's Day or all these other films where there's someone who remembers absolutely everything.
There's not one person who's remembering the loops. Yeah, I think you're right on that one.
Yeah, it's Cause and Effect and the X-Files episode Monday are the two where the longer they go, the more people start to gather and remember and have deja vu and stuff like that. Whereas the other movies, all the other people, except for the one person or two or three, depending.
Yeah.
Except for them, nobody has any idea that they've been stuck in this loop for that long, which is interesting. Anyway, so Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna do random number generator. I'm gonna do this on my phone.
Alrighty.
So alphabetical order. So Darren's 1, Donna's 2, and I'm number 3. Hold on, give me a second.
So we're gonna do a new one each round.
Well,
and then
no.
we'll do
So
one
we're
and
gonna.
it goes bum bum
So
bum.
how's this gonna go? We're gonna go in the same order until we get to the top 4. Once we get to the top 4, we're gonna do a different random for each one.
Okay, good.
Cool. So going first will be number 1. I don't know if you can see that. So that's Darren. So we'll go in proper order. Darren, Don, and me. So Darren, name us our official number 20. That's going to be at the bottom of our list.
Sometimes the joy of going first is you really get to put the rock in the appropriate story that should live at the bottom of all of this. And let me get to my notes here. Of course, talking about before I fall. Pretentious narration, preteneration. For you CinemaSins fans, this is a painful movie that leans on the trope so far. It breaks it. It brings nothing to it. The solution anybody would get by the third loop. There is a painful amount of music constantly flooding. The characters are unsympathetic. The logicals are, and even the ending doesn't really. The fact that she dies to save a person and that stops the loop makes it more of a purgatory, self-inflicted personal lesson. It's more of a Sisyphean task, if we want to use the terms used in the film. It's just, this is everything done wrong and out of order. It makes no sense. And even the final loop, she has this final goodbye like it's the last day, though there's no reason she thinks that this should be or that this would work. It's just it is the fact that this was directed by a woman hurt me, because I thought with the exploitation of the teen sexuality, this had to have been a guy behind the camera lens. Yeah, someone else take it. It deserves to be at the bottom of the list.
All right, so this is also at the bottom of my list, but to be fair, I didn't hate it as much as you. In fact, I just thought it was okay. Like, there's nothing on this list, because now that we got rid of Buffy, there's nothing on this list that I would say totally sucked. But it's kind of like there's some characterizations I liked about it. Like, there's some things that I did enjoy, that I was able to sympathize with this character, and I liked the different relationships he had with their family, and that one guy who was a bit of nerdy, and she grew to appreciate him as a bit of a trope, which we'll see again in this list. But I thought that worked. But yeah, the ending was terrible. I totally agree with you there. The tropes that they used for the time loop was very cliche and standard. And I'll be honest, because we came up with this time loop idea, I came up with it in March, and I was giving you guys enough time to sort of watch everything. And this was the first one I watched, and I don't remember it very well because it's so forgettable. In fact, several times I forgot about this movie entirely. I was like, what the hell is this? And I had to look it up on IMDb to remind, oh yeah, it's just a very bland, forgettable movie. Anyway, Don, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, listen, Sisyphus was made to suffer for all time, right? And so, I think that the filmmakers were like, okay, how can we give the audience the experience of Sisyphus? And I think it has been distilled perfectly in this movie. And honestly speaking, like, look, I did the list, right? And I had totally forgotten about the movie. Like you said, forgettable, painful to watch. To me, it's not the only one that was painful to watch, though. So yeah, I mean, and you know what's funny though? This didn't make the bottom of my list. It was close. There are
But
a couple of
what was the exact number, Don?
so number on this one was 17.
Okay, so towards the bottom.
Yes, yeah. Like I said, it didn't make the bottom, but it was close. So yeah, um, yeah. And Mark, I'm pretty sure when you find out what was at the bottom of my list, you're gonna be like, "Oh, come on, man!" You're just...
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be in my top 5, but we'll get to that.
No. At least I would hope not. I would hope you would have better, like. I hope you would, you know, I would hope that you would not, that you would have better, not sense, but I don't
Taste.
know. Yes,
Taste,
there we
yes.
go. There we go.
Anyway, I do want to say hello to the chat. We got Rob from Stricken Gun Review. We got Alyssa Jean, and we have Allison Fordyce, or just Allison. And yeah, hello everyone. How's you doing? And everyone else who's watching. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get to our collective number 19 on the list. Don, let's see if Alyssa's prediction comes true. What would you put as number 19 on the list?
I mean, listen, as Big Sis Alyssa stated in the chat, we've been through this already. We're stuck in a time loop at this point. Number 19, which was number 20 on my list. Disco. Magic to make the sanest man go mad. I'm sorry. I tried. I really tried. I fucking hated this episode. Well, I was like, I'm sorry. Listen, man. As big of a, I got into it. I went on a date earlier today, and my date asked me whether or not I was a Trekkie. And I was like, yeah, for the most part. And this is the part that isn't the most part. Okay. And it's funny because this is when you still had Captain Lorca around. Michael is not not quite a Starfleet officer, because she's been, rightfully railroaded for plotting a mutiny and all that, and Ash fucking Tyler. Oh God, why? Why does he exist? Why? So I sat there because I hadn't watched most of season 1. I had dribs and drabs of it before. But going back, I really was like, all right, let me give this a shot. And I was just like, oh God, no. How? Why? I don't want to say anymore because it's just gonna, at this point it just comes off like I'm hating, and I get that that's what people think. It's like, no, it's Star Trek. I want to love everything Star Trek. But I hate this. I do. It was at the bottom of my list. It was my number 20. And no matter what I tried to do, I couldn't get it from the bottom of the list. I tried.
All right, so this was number 18 on my list. So it wasn't that much higher. But that's just because I have a higher opinion of everything on this list, because I gave it like a 7 out of 10. Like, I think this episode's decent. I don't think it's terrible. It's there's some things I don't like about it. I don't like Harry Mudd. I don't like that character. I think the way he's portrayed as like a murderous like maniac is completely inconsistent with the original series. Rainn Wilson's a good actor. I like him, but he can't save this character. It's a terrible character, and it was ridiculous that they gave him back when they had the whole line. It's like, you're mad. Like, no, I'm Mudd. I'm like, ugh, that's so stupid. But I kind of, some of the tropes they played, like them killing Lorca over and over again, him taking enjoyment out of it. And I actually, don't hate me down with it, but I actually kind of like the relationship between Ash Tyler and Michael Burnham. I think it works in this episode. I found that interesting. And I liked how they used the time loop. So I thought this episode was okay, but compared to everything else in this, I thought it was kind of below that. So it is towards the bottom. Anyway, Darren.
Also, my number 18.
There we go.
Which, I appreciate that at least we're all kind of doing our general groups. There's an understanding of what is the bottom, what's the middle, and what's at the top. Maybe. We'll wait and see. I'll just read from my notes here because I think that's the quickest explanation. Damn, this show talks too much. Also, attempts to have an evolving character arc for a character not looping. They keep having Burnham evolve throughout the episode by getting stories told by the engineer. Stamets, thank you.
Yeah.
To push an emotional arc and change. You don't have that for looping character. Meanwhile, the looping character is barely held in the episode. Why does the chief engineer never think about locking Mudd out, blowing his ship up before he gets on board, doing something ahead of... He's the chief engineer. Never even just shooting Mudd. Taking time to dance and telling stories about how you met your beau to someone who won't remember while a countdown clock is ticking is sadly typical of this show.
Can I also add that I hate season 1 Stamets as well? I'm sorry. Come on, he was an arrogant prick in season 1. All right, he was less arrogant in seasons 2 and 3, but season 1 it was just like, dude, must you? Like, I'm sorry, every other chief engineer that we've run into has not been just an arrogant, I'm smarter than you and I'm better than you because I'm smarter than you. It's like, shut the fuck up and fix the damn ship, will you?
Yeah. I just started season 3. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, so it's just again, while it has some interesting storytelling stuff, just especially from a time loop, it really... it has some good moments with the multiple killings and stuff, but it really stumbles on so many other points. It needs to be at the bottom.
All right. Fair enough. Okay, so now falls to me, I suppose, to name the next one on our collective list. It was going to be number 18, I believe. It was number 19 on my list, and that is Happy Death Day. So, this may be a genre bias, but I typically do not like horror movies, particularly these kind of very cliche slasher-esque horror movies where it's very predictable and silly, where you got like someone dressed in a clown suit is like trying to kill them, and it doesn't actually, like the reveal on who the character is. And by the way, not so much for this movie, but we're going to spoil some of these things. Some of these movies on the list we cannot talk about without talking about spoilers. So if I'm going to spoil this one a bit, that it was like her roommate or something. And that was so dumb. Like, I saw it coming and I was like, that's stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And they had to fake out that was this maniac who tried to kill his mother that was coming back to kill her. But that's just a fake out as being really her roommate because she's just being all upset because she's prissy or some bullshit. I don't know. It's just, I don't like these horror tropes. Now, to be fair, again, I don't think this movie's terrible. There's aspects of it I like. There's some characterization. I think they did a good job exploring the main character. I just don't like these horror tropes, and I don't think the time loop did anything to improve it. But I probably enjoyed this movie more than I enjoyed other horror movies like it because there was a time loop involved. But that's it. Anyway.
Okay. Well, Happy Death Day was number 6 on my list.
Shit. Wow.
Which, well, I mean, because it does become a very interesting sort of idea on where you place things on how you think that they're dealing with the tropes. I thought that, yes, it played with the trope, but it also had fun with it. It took it different directions. I like the fact that the girls started doing changes like immediately. As soon as things started feeling wrong, she's like, I'm not walking down there. I'm not doing that, which when we get into some other tropes, there's a lot of repetition that goes in almost needlessly. I enjoy the horror bit. I think probably a little bit about more than you, and that might shift why I may have ranked it a little bit differently. This is obviously where personal choice comes in. And I thought the actress whose name I can't remember, once she started getting some actual moments to get into, was really good. I really liked her performance in a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's not in the top 5. It's not really, changing, but I think that it uses the tropes well and takes it to another interesting level, which I at least appreciated. Yes, the fact that it was the roommate at the end was like, you called it in the first 5 minutes and you were just waiting for that. And that kind of sucked. But the middle part I really enjoyed.
I thought it was stupid. It made no sense. Like, that's not how people behave. But anyway, done.
So this actually made it to number 11 on my list. And again, I mean, that just kind of shows you where I'm at as far as that there must have been things, other things that I really did not like even more. But as Darrin said, this, the fact that the character kind of picked up on things a little early, it kind of reminded me a little bit of what's that the one where everyone's supposed to die on the plane and then death.
Final Destination.
Yes, it kind of reminded me of that just a little bit in the fact that because she became aware so quickly, it wasn't a thing where you were gonna see all of the same events happening over and over again, because it's like once she got to a certain point, it was like, oh no, I know what happens here. Let me change it up. So that was pretty good in terms of that, but also I do like horror, so there was also kind of a Scream element to it, just a little bit.
I hate that movie. Oh, sorry.
I mean, I like Scream. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not my favorite horror movie of all time, but just the like I said, it kind of was almost like a throwback a little bit in the way that they did it, but at the same point, there were parts of it that felt fresh and new. But yeah, unfortunately for me, the cast was kind of forgettable. It was very kind of generic college movie kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't as bad for me as it was for you. There were things that were far worse, and we're gonna get to them.
Well, I think that overall, I'm more positive on this list than you are, Don. Because stuff at the bottom of my list is I'm not that negative on, but you seem to be negative on a lot of stuff. Anyway,
if it was like basically everything from 10 to 20 is stuff that I was like, man, I wish I could just cut this list in half.
Oh wow. I actually almost everything, even the one before I fall one, I'm positive on. I'm positive on everything. Anyway, I just want to address something in the chat. To discussion about movies and stuff that we left out. Mentioned like 12 Monkeys or Frequency, and there are movies like that and other movies, I believe, like Time Crimes or Predestination, that I did see in the research when I was looking up time loops. But I'm very specifically and very narrowly focusing on movies and shows where the characters repeat the same events over and over and over again, where we see the exact same day or hour or whatever series of events played several times throughout, which is what we're sticking with. And there's one movie that's kind of skirts this a bit, which we'll get to shortly, I'm sure. But that's mainly what we're sticking for, which is why for the record, 12 Monkeys is my favorite movie of all time. So it's not a matter of I didn't like it, it's a matter it didn't fit our definition of what we're going for. Anyway, so let's see. So we're back to Darrin, who's going to name our number 17.
Again, sometimes happy to put something in the bottom part of the list where it deserves to be. Some people like sinking other people's number ones or number twos. I'm not about that yet.
Well, you never know.
No, I'm pretty sure that this one isn't going to be too high on anybody's list, and that is Déjà Vu from The Outer Limits. Kevin Nealon as the sexy physicist. Yeah, I bought that one immediately. Plus, you have to electrocute yourself every time in order to make the loop happen. Okay. It leans on the tropes instead of offering anything new. It even skips its own explanation on what is happening. It literally does a cutscene, and then he's like, so you get it? The solution he basically stumbles into, it has nothing to do with anything that he has done. It's I mean, look, it's got Ronnie Cox in a great final moment of repeating a little scary thing, which is a little frightening, I guess. But it's just, again, another one that I had to fast forward through because I couldn't stand to watch even a half-hour long episode of this all the way.
All right, well, Darrin, you're wrong. This is number 9 on my list. I love this episode. I totally disagree with you. This is one of my favorite episodes of The Outer Limits. Now, the one thing I will agree with you on is Kevin Nealon as a scientist. He does such a horrible job. And I was like, the whole time, like, come on, Kevin Nealon. What the fuck kind of casting was this? But I actually disagree. I like the series of events in Entrapped, but one thing I love about this episode is the way that the time loop is shortening, coming to an end, and he has to pull somebody else in to help him out. And, of course, they have to overcome the evil Ronnie Cox, which, I'm sorry, give me Ronnie Cox as a villain. I'm going to love it. I don't care.
Sure. I'm not putting any wrong on that.
Totally on board with that. So I don't, and the whole ending, I love that ending where Ronnie Cox goes, he's trapped in like a 3-second
that's haunting for sure.
Dying. And I thought it was cool because it was like a way to give Kevin Nealon a happy ending and everyone else a happy ending, while at the same time you have that typical ironic kind of Outer Limits ironic ending with Ronnie Cox experiencing that pain over and over again, which was his own hubris. I mean, it is kind of a cliche that, the military is the one who fucked up the experiment. And that's what made everything go wrong, because they tried to turn it into a weapon. We've seen that in movie after movie after movie. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Miscasting.
Yeah.
Miscasting aside, this episode really worked for me. In fact, at one point I had it even higher than number 9. But anyway, I totally disagree with you. I love this episode. Anyway.
Don, who do you agree with, Don?
Oh, he's going to agree with you for sure. I know this.
No,
anyway.
I'm actually going to agree with Mark, and this is actually a lot higher on my list. This was actually number 3. because
wow,
because it wasn't. And look, because I never took it serious to begin with. It's the outer limits. I had fun with it. You know what I'm saying? So for me, yes, I got a laugh out of it because it was so ridiculous, because it's the outer limits, and so that's how it made it that high. Because laughs and drinks and things, other things. So yeah, that's how I made it to number 3.
Okay. I see how we compiled this list, maybe with different things in mind, but I'm still all about it. I didn't mean to sink your number 3. I didn't. Yeah.
No, listen, I'm not like attached to. No, you know what? I might only be attached to a few episodes on here or movies. But like, yeah, like I said, look, I didn't. It's the outer limits, okay? There was no way I was taking it serious anyway. I had fun with it, so it's fine. Some of the other things that are on this list, it was like, you took this serious when you made it, but I can't take it serious. And the fact that you were serious and it came out this bad is what pissed me off.
I think it's really funny, Darren, that you preference this. Oh, I'm sure I'm not going to sink anyone's list.
I know. I'm not saying that anymore.
That's why I was like,
learned.
Yeah, that's why I was like, well, you never know. Anyway, so Don, what are we up to? Number 16, Darren?
Number 16, yes.
Yeah, so Don, what's going to be our number 16?
So our number 16 is going to be Legends of Tomorrow, Here We Go Again. Now, listen, anyone who has watched any video that I have been on with these two gentlemen for any length of time knows I am a comic book nerd. I have all of these damn hats of comic book characters that I normally wear in a bunch of
Wow,
videos.
that's a lot of hats. Jeez.
Oh, this is only like a quarter of my collection. There's a bunch in that closet over there. Okay?
Oh, wow. I thought I had hats. Man.
Right? So, for me to have a comic book based show that is turned into a mockery of itself. It was already a mockery when it was first made to begin with, but then they just decided, you know what? We're not even going to take anything about what we do seriously at all. So, with that being said, yeah, I'm sorry. Once it got to the point where General Steel comes up and like he's trying to find shorthand to let everybody know that they're in a time loop or whatever, or whoever it was that came up and he was just like, oh, blah, 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 and they're doing hand signs. It's like, oh, we're in a time loop. I'm like, oh god, I remember like seeing the commercials for this episode, and as much as I like time loops, I was like, okay, I hope this is a good episode. And then when I remember watching it, when it originally aired, and just like, this is why I hate this show. This right here is why I hate this show right now. And yeah, so this was number 19 on my list. I wish I could have made it tie for number 20 with the Star Trek Discovery episode, but unfortunately that wasn't possible. So here we go.
Oh no, that's good to your Mark.
What was he? What?
I think that's your comment, and then I follow up, right? Because he's
Oh,
first,
well, either way, well,
Yeah.
okay. Well, we've been going in the orders, but anyway, so yeah, so Don, if you hadn't named this one, I would have named it next. This was the next one I was going to name. It's number 17 on my list. Again, like it's still in my 7 out of 10 range, so I thought it was decent. I thought it was fine. I don't have any the attachment you have with the show or the involvement because I've barely heard of it. I don't know anything about it from the comics or anything like that. I've just vaguely heard of this show, so I've never seen this show before. It's the first episode that I ever watched, and after watching this episode, I have no inclination to watch the rest of the show. But the episode itself was fine. Like it was kind of decent. In fact, I get it mixed up with another episode on this list, which we'll get to later, which I'm sure you have a much higher opinion on, which I think their two are very similar. But with this one, it was fine. Like I think the way they played the time loop work, the whole, it was kind of funny. The joke they said with the Groundhog's Day was the key word for that one dude to be like, oh yeah, I know time loop. And so, yeah, it was decent. Like there was nothing that made it stand out, which is why it was towards the bottom of my list. But there was nothing that I would think that make it suck. It was just, there. But it did, like, some of the other characters were really like 2-dimensional, and the whole way the show was played made me think, yeah, this is not a show I really want to watch. But I didn't feel like I wasted my time for watching this one episode.
Yeah, this was number 11 on my list. But again, more because, and in fact, I think you hit the points. To me, the bottom of the list is often the ones that either poorly use the time loop or waste the opportunity. To me, and I have a giant middle, which I admit would be rather nebulous, is just who does it acceptably, who uses the time trope in a reasonable manner. And then the top is, of course, is who does something new or fresh or particularly well. To me, here I go again, a perfectly serviceable example of the trope. It refers to both Cause and Effect and Groundhog Day, two other titles on our list. Does the attempts to fix it here, find the bomb. It has the boredom, the it all means nothing, the party, and the do everything, and of course leads to a better person in the end. Sadly, it is also meaningless as it only happens in the character's head via computer simulation while she waited to be healed in the med bay. So...
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I guess it's been a while since I've seen this episode. Yeah.
So again, in many ways, it wastes the trope. Does it do it perfectly serviceably well? Yeah. It is an example, a solid example of the trope, but it does nothing with it. If it even makes you less likely to watch the show, that it's really done a disservice. And I believe it deserves to be a little bottom of the list. So I have no problem with it jumping down to here.
Even though you had it at a number 11.
Well, when I get into my middle part, I'll explain. Again, this was a serviceable trope. Some of the other ones, I think, didn't use them as well or use them less.
If I remembered that twist ending, I forgot about that. I would probably rank it lower. That was dumb. But anyway.
There's a few of these on the list that are like that. Yeah.
All right. So it's my turn next, right?
It is your turn, yes.
Okay. So, again, I don't think these are terrible, but I'll go with next one on our list is going to be In Those We Left Behind from Fringe. Now, the episode itself, actually, the storyline in the episode about Stephen Root complaining about how he's going to burn the office down because people keep moving his stapler. I mean, being a scientist who is like wanting to save his wife and creating this time loop because she's been like paralyzed from the experiment. That was an interesting storyline. That's what saved this episode for me. That's why it wasn't at the bottom of my list, because I thought that worked. I thought it was very powerful. The problem is that really only comprises almost half the episode. The other half is spent on this horrible storyline in season 4 that I despise. Season 4 of Fringe. I think it totally jumped the shark with this bullshit reset universe that half of this episode focuses on, and it pisses me the fuck off. And so I wanted to put this at the bottom of my list, but then I thought, no, actually the independent storyline of the episode about the scientist works. It was actually powerful and actually got me emotionally choked up. But I couldn't put it any higher than 16 because it's that I fucking hate what they reset and oh, Peter is coming. Oh, nobody knows who he is. Let's change the entire focus of the show. Let's erase the first 3 seasons of this show we spent all this time focused on, and it pisses me off. Oh, sorry. Anyway, so yeah, that's why that lands number 16 for me. Anyway.
That is awesome, and I couldn't agree more. Okay, now this was 14 on my list. Yeah. But again, we'll get to reasons why it might be particularly where it is. Let's see. Those Left Behind, not really looping per se. One cool moment where Josh Jackson consciously jumps forward, then back in time when that little bit in the middle of the episode where he jumps to the middle of a conversation and then to the end and then back to the beginning, and he's later responding to stuff that he says himself later on, was a cool moment. And it was like 5 minutes. And I really wish they played with that idea more in this episode. It's a cool concept, but it doesn't go anywhere else. Also in the series, this is like the second or third dimensional shift and reset of characters. So that was getting old, but it's still a good show. I completely agree. This was like the third time they'd reset the show. It was like, stop reintroducing everyone. But it's also Fringe, which is a well-done show. The writing was still very interesting, and in fact, it got my son to start rewatching the series from the beginning, and so he's enjoying it. So, it has some positive points.
I feel about season 4 of Fringe around the same way I feel about season 8 of Game of Thrones. Well, so I hold it up at that same quality level. Anyway.
Hey, I missed the show. That was all. It was nice to see it again.
I like the first 3 seasons. After that, it doesn't exist. Season 5 is mediocre. Yeah. But, season 4 is nothing to me. Anyway, Don.
Okay, so listen, as someone who was not a watcher of Fringe, to me, this was a good episode. This made it to number 7 on my list. But again, when we get to some of the others that are lower down, you'll see why it made it that far. It may not be because it was so great so much as there are other movies or TV shows that I was just like, are you fucking kidding me with this? So with the whole resetting thing, I mean, again, since I'm not someone who actively watched the show like that, I didn't have the same emotional investment that you guys had, so it wasn't a thing where I'm sitting there like, oh, okay, well, damn it, they done it again. How many times are you gonna, So yeah, so maybe that's why I was able to enjoy it a little more. Like I said, decent for me. But then again, maybe I need to watch more episodes of Fringe to see why you guys didn't like it as much. Again, like I said, I didn't have as much emotional investment in it because I hadn't lived through any of the, other stuff that the characters have been through. So when I'm seeing something be reset, I don't know if it's a continuing storyline or if this is like any other kind of episodic thing where it's like, all right, well, this happened this week. Next week it'll be back to normal, like it never happened. So,
yeah, Fringe did run a nice serialized storyline overall, but we just reset every season.
To be fair, from memory, I think this was my favorite episode of season 4, or one of them. It's one of the only ones I really liked. So I did want to mention that so far, we're on our collective list, we named the bottom 5 of my list. The only one that's outside of it is Déjà Vu. Other than that, we're sticking pretty closely to my list, which I'm sure will not maintain. Anyway, Darrin, you get to test this theory. What's next?
Right,
so what number are we up to, first of all?
This will be number 14 on our list.
Right.
Our list so far, and number 20 is Before I Fall. Number 19, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. Number 18, Happy Death Day. 17 is Déjà Vu. 16, Here We Go Again. And 15, And Those We Left Behind. Setting itself now at the 14th position is my original number 17. A film I actually enjoyed mostly, except that it drags like a mother, and it takes forever to really get going. Let's see. And that is The Endless. It's a low budget, but good use for what they had. A very interesting concept and points for making a sort of sequel to their first film, which is 2012's Resolution. Actually has a lot of the same characters that you see again in The Endless. But man, does it take a long time to get going. A full hour before anything really interesting happens, and then the pacing feels very stuttery. Very much like the idea of time loop habitats. And there was one beautiful shot where you see over the desert these little domes of where all these loops are of the various times and stuff, which I thought was really interesting. Where the unseen entity is just observing what people do. It gives a nebulous but still comprehensible reason for it all to happen. But like I said, it drags. Some of it doesn't make sense. And at the end, they do the same. We're running out of time. It's all blowing up. But let's take a moment to talk about our emotional feelings and how we feel about this journey before we run away, which is just that kills it for me every time. But some really interesting concepts. I think that they brought up. Its pacing is such an issue in this film.
All right, so Darrin, we're still in sync because this was the one I would have named next as well. This was number 15 on my list. I thought it was a decent movie. I agree. It took forever to get to the point. It's in the fact that calling it a time loop movie is a bit of a spoiler because it doesn't even reveal this until towards the end. I do like the way it played with many people in different time loops, where the one guy was stuck every 3 hours, and the one people from the previous movie, as you mentioned, were stuck for once a week. And then you had that, as I mentioned, the dude from the Civil War who was being killed every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And for over 100 years, he'd been being murdered every 5 seconds. That's this special kind of hell. But here's the thing. I think this movie had a lot of potential that wasn't realized. I think the characters were there. The mood was really creepy, but I read it was a horror movie. So I was waiting. I was on edge because I was waiting for this movie to totally creep me out and fuck me up, which that Civil War era guy, that was pretty horrific, but I was expecting something more. I was expecting something involving our main characters, something to really freak me the fuck out, and it never came. And it never happened. And as I said before that I didn't really like horror movies. I mean stereotypical horror movies like the Friday the 13th, which I thought Happy Death Day was more like, or Scream, whatever. But the horror movies I like are the thrillers that have this creepy, eerie feel to it. Like The Shining-esque, the creepy, on edge feeling, and I felt this had that, but it never fully realized it. It never took it to the next level. Instead, it took an hour to set up the movie, and I was like, "Come on, let's get on to it." But and also the concept of there being a creature that happened to live in this woods that are creating time loops so they can kill people and over again. Then and another thing, the one thing that really bothered me about this movie is the fact that those people in the UFO camp were repeating a loop every 10 years. So they knew full fucking well they were in a time loop, and they never stated it. Like, until the end of the movie, they like danced around it. And like, why don't they just tell the people, hey, we're in a time loop, you should leave. Otherwise, but they're going to be so vague. They're like, oh, you can go if you want to, without explaining the full thing. And that pisses me off when people act purposely obtuse or withhold information which is out of character, but in order for the plot to happen so the audience doesn't know too much. That's a movie trope that annoys me. Anyway, Don.
Here, piggybacking off of what you said, though, just said, there are people who withhold information all the time. It's kind of like, in real life, where it's just like, I could have used that information to not be stuck in the situation that I'm in right now. People do that all the time, and just like, oh well, I didn't think it was that important. Like, I'm sorry, what now? Why why would you not think that this is vitally important? Just let you figure it out on your own, or something like that. So, like, I get it, but at the same point, like, having run into people who withhold vital information, and then it's just like, you do realize how much time you cost me by not giving me the full story, right? So, I didn't have as much of an issue with
Well, I just want to respond to that real quick because I think this movie does it to an unrealistic degree. I think nobody in real life would behave the way these people do. When there's a creature that's going to kill you if you don't leave, they're going to fucking they're not going to, it's not going to slip their mind to mention you'll be trapped in a horrific time loop. Like, I think the way that people acted was unrealistic and obtuse. Like, I don't think anyone would behave that way in real life.
Listen, it's a horror movie. In horror movies, they take common sense, they write down the words "common sense" on a piece of tinfoil, and then they crumble that up. They throw it in an oven, and then once they take it out of the oven and see that it's this thing is red hot, and they go and toss it into the ocean. Then they take it out of the ocean, and then they put it in a rocket and launch it in space.
Well, that's exactly why I don't like horror movies. That reminds me of the movie Prometheus, where it's this alien snake going, and the guy's like, "Oh, isn't that so cute?" Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yes,
okay. Anyways, sorry, Don.
No, I get it. I get it. All right, so the endless. I'm sorry, the endless. That wound up at number 10 on my list.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, like I said, I like horror movies. I understand going into horror movies that the people are going to like when it comes to logic and common sense, all that gets thrown completely forget out the window. It gets thrown off the planet. All right. So at this point, I try to have fun with it and not think about it too much from that particular perspective.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, that's fair, but I think as a horror movie, it could have done more. As I was saying, it could have been better. But yeah,
horror movies should always be done better.
Yeah, but yeah, if you're trying to
well,
help,
I mean, the
you
good
can't
ones
say
get
run
there,
time
like A
loop
Quiet Place. Like, that's a perfect horror movie. Aliens, that's a perfect horror movie in mine. But anyway,
this is true.
Okay,
Don, you get to name number 13. Who's going to be number 13 on our list?
Okay, so number 13 is going to be Ark. This was actually number 18 on my list. I can't believe, wow, we're still that far at the bottom. Listen, you know what? Stephen Amell was pretty good as Robbie Raymond on Legends of Tomorrow Season 1, as Firestorm. But anything else that anybody from that family happens to be in, unfortunately, absolute basura. Okay? And if you don't know what that means, Mark, you speak Spanish. Tell him, please. You don't
Garbage.
speak.
It's garbage, folks.
Okay, I thought Mark spoke Spanish. All right.
No, just
Trash.
un poco.
Okay. Well, yeah, trash. I'm sorry. Like I said, I think Robbie Amell is a good actor. But just first off, it's a Netflix movie. I'm sorry. Like like Netflix movies are like 1 in 10 shot of being good, right? We got The Irishman, so that means everything after that for a while is gonna be trash. And then what was the other one? We got The Irishman, and we got the one with Chris Hemsworth. So we got those two. So that means that we got a long stretch of trash until we get a good movie again. And yeah, so look, forget about even talking about the story. I'm sorry, Robbie Amell. You should have fought to stay on Legends of Tomorrow, because then maybe that might still be a decent show instead of doing this movie. Yeah.
I thought this movie was fine. In fact, I remember, like, I don't remember liking it that much the first time I saw it. When I went back and rewatched it, I actually appreciated it a bit more. So this is number 12 on my list, so not much higher than what it landed. I think I do give it some pass from being such a low budget film. I think what they did with the low budget, using one location, and how they managed to keep this film engaging with keeping it with that location and keeping with the limited amount of characters they had. I was actually kind of impressed with that. And I think the way they used the time loop was interesting as well. It's always more interesting to me when they bring in other people into the time loop, and how he has his girlfriend, which I knew instantly, like, that she was in on it and helping that, like, that was obvious. But then he figured it out, and then he brought her into it, and they still, like, tried to work something out, and they had this, like, dystopian future background, which I thought really worked and added to the film. I like the twist ending. I think that was actually really effective, and they kind of left it open-ended. They didn't really explain what happened. It kind of maybe implied that this loop is going to go on forever and they're going to be stuck here forever. But I liked it. So this is kind of unique within the time loop things, is that it's like a subset of loops where they remember everything, but when that set is over, that whole set repeats and they don't remember from the previous set, which I found a really interesting concept. And I think it was effectively eerie ending there, really creepy, eerie ending. So that's sort of, I don't think it's great or anything. I think I also gave this a 7 out of 10. But that's probably how it made it all the way up to 12 on my list. But anyway, Darren.
Yeah, well, things are running perfect in my book, because this was my number 13, which I found interesting. And for the exact, and for the many of the same reasons that you talk about right there, Mark, it's an interesting and smart use of a lower budget. Having a single location and a handful of actors saves you a bunch of money and gets you to be able to explore. If you're going to do any effects or spend anything, you spend it on appropriate moments. And I think that that's really good choices. Was tight, contained, with some interesting twists and choices. Unfortunately, I thought it kind of gived up at the end with a suggestive but inconclusive ending that really fails to bring the narrative anywhere. I like the loops within a loops, and that everything is going on, the discovery that we're doing it. And I don't know if by her waking up first, it's implying that something is changing. But ultimately, yeah, it's very open-ended on, is this going to go on forever? Is this what? And to me, it ended more, instead of a let's leave this intentionally vague, of we have a great idea and we don't really know where to take it anymore, so let's just end it. And I felt a little bit more on the latter of that. But again, smart use of a low budget for a film, and I always have to kind of applaud that.
All right, so I'm next, right?
That is correct, sir. With our
we're
number
up to
12.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was going to pick this one. Okay.
So we're up to number 12. Okay, so think I may blow some people's lists with this. I'm not sure. But it was number 14 on my list, and that's going to be Source Code. It's funny because I remember I saw this movie in the theaters when it first came out, and I remember hating it and thinking that the premise, the twist was stupid. And I ran out, walked out of the theater feeling very disappointed and cheated. But when I watched it again for this, I'm like, hey, actually, it's not that bad. Like, I think going into the movie, knowing what the twist is, I don't have that disappointment factor. I know what I'm getting into. I know that this is actually some dude who's actually dead, military officer that they used in an experiment in order to try these parallel worlds kind of thing. And once I knew that, I think the way they explored his character and explored him figuring this out and explored him actually, and I like the reveal that they think it's just like a simulation, but it's actually like creating parallel worlds by doing that. So that was kind of an interesting concept. I think when I first saw this movie, my expectations were way too high because I love Jake Gyllenhaal, and there was the dude who directed Moon, which I love that movie as well. So I was expecting this great masterpiece, which it certainly was not. But watching it again, it's okay. I think it's decent. It's passable. It's fine. That's why it was like number 14 on my list. But anyway.
Yeah, okay. Well, coming in also at number 12 on my list, so we're kind of syncing up right exactly with me. Yeah, exact same dreams. I mean, in a way, it's not looping. You're actually jumping into parallel dimensions, and they're very vague in that description of it. It's fine. They only loop a few times. It seems less interested in the loop idea than him hitting on his girl passenger and eventually leaving. I do love the opening shot into Chicago and the train, and the view on that is beautiful. I always think, whenever I see that art piece and anywhere else, I always think of Source Code. So, I mean, it has made an indelible certain edge. But yeah, story-wise, it's very basic. They don't want to explain a whole lot. They give you just enough and then leave it open-ended. I do think this was the first time I saw Jeffrey Wright in something that I really remember. Wow. I mean, that I remember. I probably saw him in other things before him, but this is one of the ones that just sort of popped up. Which also leaves a good thing. But yeah, ultimately, it just plays with the troop, but it's really focusing more on a love story, and everything else is just kind of basic behind it. And it's okay. It's not great. There's a lot of things I would rather watch before. In fact, something else on the list I had to watch afterwards just to sort of cleanse my palate. We'll talk about that later. Don.
Okay, so I am not a big Jake Gyllenhaal fan. So this to me was part of a string of bad movies for him. I remember seeing the trailers for this and thinking, why would they make this movie? And after watching the movie, I was still like, why would they make this movie? So Source Code was number 16 on my list. Listen, this whole thing with like, okay, so yeah, you're jumping back in time, but when you jump back in time, it's a parallel universe, and they're trying to figure out like what's the proper kind of like the proper flow of time to I mean, listen, I'm sorry, where is Kang with the TVA right about now? All right, I need all these branches pruned from reality. Seriously. Like I said, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, why would they make this movie? And then after having to watch it for this list, I like that was still my thing. I'm like, oh god, no. And again, I don't hate Jake Gyllenhaal, but to me, this was like after Brokeback Mountain, which I didn't see that movie, had no interest in it, but like I noticed that every time somebody gets nominated for an Oscar or is in an Oscar winning movie, like it just seems like okay, now I've got to go do some bullshit for the next few years. And I'm sorry, this was one of the movies where I was just like, why can't you people pick better scripts? Why? Like the money can't be that great. You have to know this isn't going to do well. But yeah, all right. Can we please move on from this for the love of God?
so Darren, I guess you're next. What number are we up to now?
This would be number 11.
Okay.
For the list. And again, it's the middle of the list, so it makes sense why it would last this long. But this was my number 16, the only series on this list, and that is Russian Doll. A painful show I still haven't been able to finish. They're half-hour episodes that feel like an hour. It starts off fine, but the pacing is so off. What the goal of this show is, I don't know. If it's just a character bit, it gets more interesting once they introduce the second looper. But otherwise, there was so much work to try and push through this show. It just became painful. Apparently, it's getting a second season, so some people like it. But I couldn't wait for this so much to be over with. I just stopped watching it. Yeah. Don? Or
Russian Doll, number 15 on the list, right above Source Code. So need I say more?
Number 2 on my list.
oh,
In fact, I liked this show a lot better the second time I saw it.
I watched it twice.
Yes, I was enthralled. I totally disagree with you, Darren. I almost think the exact opposite. Because when I saw the commercial for this on Netflix, I'm like, oh, they're doing a time loop movie. And then I saw it was a TV show. I'm like, oh my God, how the fuck are they going to do a time loop, repeat the same thing over and over again as a TV show? And I watched it. I was so blown away and impressed with how they managed to keep it interesting and fresh. I think these characters are come to life. I think the characterization in this show is absolutely amazing. I was totally invested in all the characters. I think the journey, there's so many symbols and stuff and metaphors I looked up online of everything that's going on that involves like all these little tidbits. It's such an intricate, layered show. And I was so impressed with it the second time. And I got to admit, I'll get to this later, but my top 5 has changed like maybe 5 or 6 times as I was making this list. At one point, this was my number 1, but eventually at one point it went back down to number 2. And the main reason, the only strike I have against this show, which I thought was nearly perfect, was the ending, which I guess, Darren, you didn't see.
No.
But the final scene I thought was pretentious, where they meet up with these homeless people having a festival. I'm like, that's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. But I do like the character arc of how they grew as characters and how they came to the end and how they sort of had that. Bringing in that second character did make it more interesting, but I think I love how they waited till halfway through the show to bring him in. I thought it was a stroke of brilliance. I think this is a work of art.
I'm so sorry to have put the stone in that for you. I mean, it didn't get as far down the list as it was on mine. But yeah, now admittedly, there were some high points to it. I did like it initially. It actually, and the more I watched, the further down the list it got, because I do like a lot of the characters. I do like the fact that she starts changing things initially, and there are some. But the fact that she has to die and these like just ridiculous reasons of repeated dying started to just get very, it's like forced to me. So I think that's what sank it a little bit more in my mind.
I didn't think it was forced. I thought it was quirky. I liked it. I thought it was funny. Anyway, so Alyssa and Rob in the chat agree with me. So
yeah, I've noticed that. So far, it's Mark, Rob, and Alyssa versus myself and Don. That's fine. You can all be wrong. All right. Well, okay, Don, then you get the chance to give our number 10, get about halfway through the list. What's number 10 for us, man?
Wow, it's funny because like this is all right. So I'm guessing this is way higher on you guys' list, but it's Dark Matter all the time. So yeah, this was number 14 on my list, and now it is number 10 on our collective. Again, like I said, anything lower than 10 for me, it just, just the 12 labors of Hercules. Look, I try with some of this stuff. I mean, look, the one thing I can say is Netflix TV shows are better than their movies. Hey, it's going a little bit. So at least it had that.
Well, this was originally a Sci-Fi Channel show.
Oh, okay. And maybe that's part of the reason why. Look, there's not too many things on Sci-Fi that I actually were ever big fans of. I mean, other than The Expanse. Yeah. I'm sorry. I have a cat on my chest right now. It's kind of disrupting my thoughts.
Cats do that.
Yeah, and apparently you see he is very affectionate, unlike the previous cat. Seriously, little boy. All right. Yeah. So, I'm sorry. He's just totally messed up my train of thought right now. So I'm gonna have to turn it over.
All right. So, actually, I would have named this next as well. This was number 13 on my list. But I kind of have a special place in my heart for Dark Matter because I watched the show when it first came out, and the showrunner Joseph Malosi was I actually got to interview him once on YouTube, and so I kind of have like a special place, and I felt so guilty about all the negative things I said about the show when I was interviewing him. I was like, God damn, I hope he doesn't go see it. But yeah, and so I actually got to talk to him about this episode in particular, and the Stargate episode, which we'll get to later, which he also wrote on. And his idea about it. And so I think maybe that experience made me appreciate it a bit more. I don't think it's amazing. When I went back and watched it again, I had to be a bit fair and not put it in my top 10 because I don't think it's an amazing episode. But I do like the way they use humor. I like how I think they effectively use humor. I love how they just throw you straight into the time loop, and the guy is like trying to explain it. I think that's the one thing I didn't like about this episode is the fact that nobody believed him. It's realistic, but it got a bit tired after a while. But then they had some funny things like him singing songs in French or whatever. So yeah, it's decent. It was a decent episode. I liked it.
I was going to make the mark. Yeah, only one of two episodes. Only one's on the list that has the same writer for two different entries onto our list, and we'll talk about that when we get to the other one as well. Let me see from my notes. All the Time in the World is primarily a single looper story that begins mid-journey through the time loop as Five tries to convince the rest of the crew he's looping. He is aware from the beginning. Five resets anytime he is killed or loses consciousness, ultimately learning it's caused by an alien clock he touched the day before, or the time before, whatever. Because, day, when you're looping, it becomes a very relative thing. This does... the android is the one that does solve the problem, and it does allude to what would happen in a following season that sadly we never got to. yeah, this was number 10 on my list. It's right where it should be. And yeah, it's a very serviceable use of the trope. It's fun. The characters are great. Yes, Five learns French because he can't learn a technical term, which seems a very backwards thing to learn. Also, another trope repeated by Melissa.
It's three. The
three, sorry.
Three. Yeah,
that's right. My bad. I was going to say that didn't sound right as it was coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Android's final journey implies a future season that never happened. Again, it's a fun, serviceable. I really like Dark Matter. I was bummed when it was lost. Because I like this show, it probably gives it a little bit higher on the list. But ultimately, it's just a fair, basic example of the trope. Nothing really special, but it doesn't mess it up either. And it makes it kind of interesting. I think you're right with the humor at all.
Yeah, and I do like the ending with the vision. I thought that was a good foreshadowing. It's a shame that they never got to follow up on it, but yeah.
But again, it's used in an interesting way and then builds onto it with something else, which when you have series that are doing shows, often one that we'll get to even later on and talk a bit more is how much does it depend on you knowing the characters and how much can it stand on its own, even if you don't. And personally, to me, that kind of affected some of my rankings too.
All right, so what are we up to, Darren? What number are we up to?
Dun, dun, dun. We just finished number 10 halfway through the list. 9. We are into the official top 10 now with number 9.
So that's me, right?
And that is you, sir.
Okay, so this was number 11 on my list. So towards the top, at least halfway through. I have a feeling some people might disagree with me here. But number 11 on my list is going to be Cause and Effect. From Star Trek Next Generation.
Wow.
I have been I've stated several times in Star Trek that I don't like this. I don't like this episode as much as some other people do. When this episode first came out when I was 11 and 12, I loved it to death. In fact, I saw this before Groundhog Day. So when Groundhog Day came out, I was like, oh, they're doing Cause and Effect. And so, so I used to love this episode, but as I got older and especially as the time loop genre evolved, I think this one kind of became a bit outdated and left behind because I think it drags a bit and is a bit repetitive. Now, when I mentioned that before, other people are like, oh, it's supposed to be repetitive. It's a time loop. I get that, but there's other time loop, like other stuff that's higher on my list that I think does Russian doll, sorry, and other things that does the time loop genre without it feeling repetitive. Well, they keep it fresh, they keep it new, they move on, they cut through it, they don't just repeat the same exact beats over and over and over again, which this episode does a bit too much, and they should have cut that back and spent that time explaining who the fuck Captain Fraser is and how he got to collide with the Enterprise. I'm still sour that they never explained that and they cut right when the episode's getting good. Why would you do that? But don't get me wrong, I still like this a lot. I think I gave it an 8 out of 10. It's number 11 on my list, so that's fairly high towards the top, or at least halfway there. And because I do think it's inventive the way that they leave messages for themselves and they slowly start to figure out what's going on, and the whole thing about the threes appearing everywhere is classic. I just think that this episode could have used with a little tightening. That's just my opinion. Anyway.
Fair enough. This was my number 4. And yes, this is actually the beginning of the time loop genre in America, effectively. This predates Groundhog Day by a few months. Now, Groundhog Day, I think, was being discussed for like several years before it was made. So,
was it more than a few months? I thought it was like a year.
Well, it's the year before. I thought it was like the fall beforehand, and then this was the spring. So it might have been, but I don't remember when this particular episode came out. But yeah, so in some ways, this was kind of the beginning. So the fact that it's hasn't really worked through all the tropes totally, to me makes sense. Let's see. From my notes, Cause and Effect is a rare group loop. as the episode begins ostensibly mid-journey through their time loop by the senior staff, starting with Beverly Crusher, slowly becomes aware of their predicament. They do at least have a reason of why this is happening. The Enterprise exploded after colliding with a ship by a localized time-space distortion. Science-y stuff, always what TNG leans on the most, which the crew must try to change in order to escape. I do like the slow dawning while it's repeated, the fact that one person gets it and then more people start to get it and then they start to predict. And so this kind of growing unease that something is wrong and repeating. Again, it's an early use of the trope. I think that it did it well. Interesting. Let's see, notable moments. Beverly, Worf, and Riker guessing the next cards in the card game. I do wish that others like Ensign Rowe reacted to the loop. It ended up just being really the senior staff that we saw, but nobody else seemed to have any of those moments. Data sends a message to their next loop using Dekion fields. Yes. Phlebotonia. Made up words that we could use to get to the next phase. And of course, we had Kelsey Grammer as a time-trapped Federation captain. I don't remember where this was in his career relative to Cheers, but it was a young Kelsey Grammer.
It was Frasier days. Frasier days.
Okay, so it was after Cheers.
Yeah, after Cheers. Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, you can see how much I watch those shows.
I mean, listen, you know what? I like this episode a lot personally. And come on, listen, it's Kelsey Grammer. I'm pretty sure, budgetary reasons were the reason why the scenes were weren't longer.
No, it's not. Then cast someone else. Come on.
Yeah, he wanted to be on Star Trek.
Yeah, that's
fine. He can do it longer. Exactly. Come on.
I mean, look, that was definitely one of the things where I was wondering, well, damn, how, I wish they would have explained that part, because if he had, had basically, it was like 40 years or something like that, it was, I think it was like 40 years, because 60.
Yeah, I think he flew the time through the time-space distortion, which brought him forward.
But that
in
makes
time,
no sense.
And then he looped
exactly. That would make more sense. It would make no sense for him to be trapped for 80 years. I think they said 80. It would make no sense for them to be trapped for, because how come they didn't figure it out and they had no idea what's going on? It would have made more sense if he was like an Enterprise C situation where he just threw through the rift, which is why I wish they would have explored this and explained this. Is why it pisses me off that they didn't. But anyway, sorry.
Well, no, I definitely agree with that particular part. I mean, look, you know what? This was an episode of TNG that I happen to love. This was number 5 on my list. But I can understand, definitely your frustration about it, because even when I rewatched it, I was kind of like, yeah, this is a little weird. I wish they would explain, like, how was it that he flew into this thing and then wind up in this time loop, and has he been in a time loop, or did
he let Norm drive?
Yeah. and then also the other thing too was, they should have, like, once the ship came up, like once Data figured out, like, okay, don't try to deflect the ship, because that's what makes everything go haywire. I'm surprised that, like, they, at that point, they should have been able to look up the registry number and realize, okay, this ship disappeared however many, decades ago, because remember, to that, like they said earlier in the episode, that this part hadn't even been explored before. So that means that ship should have been in the registry as, hey, this is a lost vessel. So,
well, before we move on, I did want to point out that Norman Buckwell in the chat comes up with a very great counterbalance to very great counter to my argument, and that is all hands abandon ship. Repeat, all hands abandon.
classic, Dexter. Everyone shaking your seats. Maybe the same way, maybe not. We don't know if there's an AD like to the left.
Anyway, what was I gonna say? So there in season 6 they made what they thought was a sequel to this. They wanted to like do something similar but go more crazy with it, an episode called Timescape, which personally I think is much better. That's in my top 10 favorite of TNG episodes. I think this one's a little overrated and that's underrated, but that's just my opinion. But that's not a time loop episode, so I couldn't include it in this countdown. Anyway, so that was me. So on to Darrin next to do our number 8, correct?
Our number 8. Honestly, surprised that it lasted this long, but again, it's in the middle of the road, so I don't really argue with it too much. And that is this year's Hulu movie, Boss Level, which is just silly video game fun. It is the trope personified. If you were, it literally leans into the video game trope so much. It poses it that way. The game is basically you restarting an old video game over and over. You know where to go. You know what to do. It at least does have a little bit of an emotional point somewhere like 3/4 through. I think I felt something with the kid or something like that in the worry. But there's really nothing special about this outside of just big, goofy action. And I mean, yeah, you get Michelle Yeoh in there, but really in a whole wasted moment. It's fine. It's fine. Don. Thought?
Oh, you're gonna make me okay. So look, it's got Frank Grillo. So I mean, it's pretty. I mean, look, it's kind of cool, because you got Frank Grillo kind of as the I guess what your video game avatar or whatever. And it's funny because seeing this really had me like, why wasn't he the Punisher? I mean, he's cool as Crossbones. He should have been Punisher, to me. Not that I don't think that Michael Bernthal was a good Punisher, but
John Bernthal, Bernthal, get his name right.
Sorry, don't kill me. I'm sorry, but yeah, John Bernthal, good Punisher, but to me, like Frank Grillo, like this was one of the things that for me was just like, yeah, him, Punisher. So yeah, it was a decent movie for what it was. Like nothing to write home about. But like I said, it's just one of the things that for me and Rob is like Bernthal is Frank Castle. I don't know. Personally, like I said, Frank Grillo for me would have been perfect Punisher.
So, John, where did this rank for you? What number was it at for you?
So this one was number 12.
12, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, it was in the take it or leave it kind of thing.
Cool. So this was number 5 on my list. I love this one. I was surprised how much I love it. I love it. I think I was surprised at how much it works. Like it's a goofy movie, but that's what it wants to be. That's what it tries to be, and it succeeds totally. It knows what exactly kind of movie it is. It's playing with video game tropes, and it does it really well. I was actually surprised, like the way they structure is like perfect. How they go into it, and they have this narration, they have the flashbacks, the way they edited it, and they throw it, like the whole structure of the film. I was super impressed with, and I was also super impressed within this goofy, silly video game-esque movie, they have a character story with a real heart behind it. Like I was actually invested in the character story with him trying to reunite with his son and find his wife, who he thinks he's dead, but he finds out that she's still alive at the start of the loop, so he has to get there in time to save her. Mel Gibson's in this movie, which sucks, but other than that,
It does sink it a little bit.
Yeah. But other than that, I think I was super impressed with what it did. And when I look at all the entries on my list and how they use time loops and how it's structured and how successful they are, this is one of the ones I think does it the best. So this was top 5 for me. But anyway, yeah.
And I can't necessarily disagree with, like I said, there was a little bit of emotion I felt in there. I just thought that it was literally like just what the trope is completely. But yeah, I was surprised there was a little bit of emotion in there that I was feeling. So I agree with you on that one.
It was fun. Like after I watched it, I was like, I felt invigorated. I was like, wow, this is, and I actually watched it again. I watched it 2 times in a row. I was like that invigorated with it. Well, not in a row. I waited a couple of weeks, but anyway. So we're up to number 7, correct?
Yes.
So we're getting up there. So it's Don's turn next.
Yes, Don. What you got for us, man?
So number 7, I've seen people going over this one in the chat, so I'm pretty sure people are going to be kind of pissed off. And this is Palm Springs. Another kind of comedy thing that we got going on there. So look again. This one was actually number 13 on my list. And I've already told you, anything from 10 and below, kind of a take it or leave it kind of thing for me. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I had fun with it because it didn't take itself too seriously. Yeah, but cool movie. I didn't think it was anything. I didn't think it was anything too special. It was a time loop movie.
All right, so this was number 6 on my list. This is another movie that I didn't think as much of it the first time I saw it, but when I watched it again, I appreciated it more. I think it again. I'm looking at the structure of how they use the time loop, and I think the way that it's edited together and the way that they use it is good because, and it's also like. We find out that this guy, as I said at the start of the video, was in this time loop for like 40 years. And even though it's never stated explicitly in the film, the actor plays it. You can tell how beaten down and just how forgotten he is. And I love, and this is what it stands out as unique to me from most of the other entries on this list because most of the other entries, like they try things and you see them try all these different things. But here it begins where he already has. And so when the other woman enters the time loop with him, he's like, what if you do this? It's like, oh, I already done that. One time I took a bunch of crank and I flew to, to Ecuador, New Guinea or some shit like that. But the way the rules of this time loop work is as soon as you fall asleep, the loop repeats. So you try to keep himself awake, but eventually he got there. And like how he was resigning. The other fun fact I learned is that the woman who went into time loop with him was in it for a mere 2 years compared to his 40 years. Which is this, and of course the fucking J.K. Simmons. You gotta love J.K. Simmons and the way his character just comes up and constantly like kills him in the most vile ways for getting him trapped in the time loop. And I thought it was a very strong character story. It felt like I did my research for another movie we'll talk about. I'm sure eventually Groundhog's Day. And the idea for this movie seemed to be what the original idea for Groundhog's Day was before they changed it a bit. They wanted it to be more of an indie film that was more serious and dealt with issues and started with the time loop already in progress and had the girl enter the time loop with them. So it seems like they took the discarded ideas of Groundhog's Day and made this film. I really love this movie. Anyway,
I remember this being really big and everyone talking about it when it came out. I didn't watch it until I had to for this. Sometimes when things are popular, I don't like to watch them. I'm just counter that way. But I agree with you. This was actually number 7 on my list. So again, perfectly right on. And this is when we're getting to the area of taking the trope and doing something interesting with it. That you've got 2 different people going, one starting the loop, one who's already been in it. And you're right. The fact that he has tried all of these things and he's completely worn out at this point is a great counter to her like expectation. You know, the whole bit was like, I've just got to be a right person. I got to do the right thing. And he's just like, yeah, good luck to you. Let me know how that works out. You know, it's awesome. You know, yeah, J.K. Simmons is great. And I love at the end where he goes to the bar like, all right, I got your message. What is it? And it's the loop version of him. And he's like, yeah. I mean, it was such an awesome way to end it. And again, it was just fun. The girl was fine. There was some stuff that was a little draggy and a little repetitive and stuff that got a little bit of annoying. But overall, yeah, I like, again, we're taking the trope and we're doing something new with it. If it's the fact that it's Groundhog, more to the original Groundhog Day, and we'll talk a little about that when we get to it, is kind of an interesting loop rearrangement unto it itself. So, I mean, I kind of like that extra depth layer of it.
Right. Let's see. So it's my turn next, right, Darren?
Yes. You get number 6 before we hit the top
6.
5 and redo our orders.
Well, we start at number 4.
Oh, we're at number 4. Sorry. Okay. So,
yeah.
So I get to start and end the thing.
Yeah. So yeah, because the 4 will be we each get one more pick because whoever picks number 2 is also going to pick number 1.
Effectively, yes. Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
All right. So so this is number 10 on my list. I mean, it makes it all the way up to number 6. I suspect you guys had it higher than me because it's a show you've both seen and love, which I've never watched before. It is As I've Always Been from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's made it all the way up to number 10, even though I had zero attachment to the show. And honestly, I think watching this episode and the episode of Legends of Tomorrow, I think they're very similar. Like sometimes I get it confused in my head because I know you feel differently, Don, because you've seen both shows. I haven't seen either show, so both was new, but they both had the same structure. On a ship where this girl or woman who's the outsider who doesn't get along very well with the crew starts experiencing this time loop and no one else believes her, and so she has to work to figure it out. So it seemed very similar to me in that regard. But I do think this is definitely better than the Legends of the Smart One, for sure. I did have it much higher. I was actually really impressed with this episode, even though I had no emotional attachment to the characters. I still able to get emotionally involved. And even so was this a death of a main character in the show?
Yeah. Well, yeah, from several seasons. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I was able to actually got emotionally invested with that. I do think that they dragged it out a bit too long towards the end. With it became less about the time loop, more about stopping this guy or the artificial life form or whatever it was, and that kind of, to me, that detracted from the point of the episode, that it became all about that rather than, I don't know. It seemed like they should. Why didn't they just focus on other ways to stop the time loop? I don't know. You guys are gonna say I know nothing about the show, which is true. I don't. But anyway. So yeah, I liked it. So even though I had no attachment to the show, it made it all the way up to number 10 for me. So cool. Anyway.
No, I think that's a fair response. There is a couple of these that you do have to kind of wonder is how well do they stand on their own without knowing anything else about the show, and how well do they fit in within the arc of the show. And you're right, in some ways this does it very well. I like that you have, again, 2 loopers, one that sometimes remembers the loops and one that always does but isn't always turned on, so it kind of gets a great frustrating energy to them. The repeated attempts to kill or take out Enoch are hilarious, and some of the body pileups and responses and stuff. But you're right, it suffers from almost too much trying to be crammed into the episode. And the fact that it does end with Enoch's death is very emotional if you're invested in the show. I am glad, as somebody who is not, you also felt that emotion. Joel, God, I can't remember the actor's name who does Enoch in that. Was amazing. I mean, he definitely became a fan favorite because of his presentation. But it was also a bit of a deus ex machina of like, oh, in order to solve this guy's got to die. Oh, I do? Well, here you go. And then spending 5 minutes after he's removed his heart to slowly die, so we have the emotional components. It's directed by Elizabeth Henstridge, who plays Gemma Simmons on the show. I think that was her directorial debut on the show. She killed it for both the series and emotional bit. It was a little higher on my list. It was number 9 on my list. I'm happy it being a little higher. But yeah, again, it's a good example of the trope. I think it's successful. Joel Stoffer, thank you very much, Rob, who plays Enoch. It had some great emotional moments, but it's also, I think, kind of suffers from trying to get too much happening in the episode.
It was only one higher than me. I had a 10.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Don? What do you think about As I Have Always Been?
This was my number 4. This was number 4 on my list. And it's funny because this isn't even the only Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Episode that has a time loop. You could have went with I think it's either season 5 or season 6. I forget which episode exactly it is. But
this is the only one that I found on my research. So
really, no, there's one other one with a time loop, but it doesn't it doesn't do it the same way like this. It's more like there is resetting, but they have to figure out like come on, Darren, you know which one this one.
Yeah, I
would fit. Trying to figure out how to
There is, but I'm not sure if it's. Anyway, this is a better example of really the loop trope. Anyway, from that.
That's probably why I came up on my research, other than that other episode.
Well, yeah. Listen, Enoch became a fan favorite character, and we were hoping that we wouldn't lose anyone in the last damn season. So that one was a tough blow. Again, like Darren said, Elizabeth damn it, why can't I pronounce the name right now? Elizabeth Henstridge did a great job directing this episode. Like, not too many of the actors actually did directing duties for the series, so I think that she did a great job for this one. Yeah, and the thing that I liked about it was the fact that there were the two loopers, and one comes in and she's like, "Wait, okay, I know what this is," and then when Enoch finally kind of catches up, just like, oh, because now they also have. It's not them going through the same thing and trying to figure it out together. Enoch was the opposition, even though he didn't want to be. And so that was one of the things that I really liked about it, was that once he enters the story, or once you figured out that he's been there the entire time and he's the one kind of sabotaging things, that to me was part of the interesting thing, because it's like, all right, well, now you got to try to figure out how to trick the person who already knew that all of this bad stuff was going to happen, because he was the one that was causing it. So that was a thing that I really liked about it. Mark, you got something to say? I don't know if you have your hand up or something, or
No. I was just stretching.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I'm like, oh wait, that's interesting on this one. So yeah, that was one thing I really loved about it. And look, it's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so it was always going to rank high for me.
All right, Darren, I guess we loop back to you. You get an extra vote. You're on mute, sir.
honestly, how this top 5 is working out, I'm totally happy with. By the way, I'm very excited. Now, of course, so number 5, ending this out. One of my favorite shows. I'm actually in the middle of a rewatch right now, so I was more than happy to jump back into this episode. It's, of course, Window of Opportunity from Stargate SG-1. Just a brilliant, fun example of the trope. They jump right into it. They move on. They realize very quick the fact that you have 2 loopers in O'Neill and Teal'c allows a lot of time wasting to get pushed out of the way. Again, the other entry also written by Joseph Malazzi, who is in a way credited as writer in this episode, as his name is on the Latin book, the writer of the Latin book that Jack O'Neill is reading in this episode. Just fun. It's a standalone episode. You don't have to know anything about SG-1 for it to actually work. If you know a little bit, then that little kiss between him and Carter makes a little bit more sense because they've just been playing with that this season. In fact, just the episode before is when there's that kind of conscious acknowledgement that there is some sort of attraction here. So it fits in perfectly, but it doesn't dwell on it. It doesn't. Sadly, the only kind of pullback is when he does mention Groundhog Day at the end, because otherwise it needed no reference to anything else for it to work. And they have a great explanation of why it does.
But that's totally in Colonel O'Neill's character.
It is. It's totally in his character. The fact that it's never referred to previous in the episode when they're searching about what's going on or trying to explain it is the only thing that's like, so why did you do it now? But again, it works
he
very
wanted
well.
to make a quirky joke.
As I said, if I'm making a criticism, it's very little. This is what I had to rewatch. This is what I watched after Source Code to bring me back up to happy land. Look, I can't talk about. I love this show, and I think this was a great example of the trope, and I think it's right where it needs to be on this list.
Don?
So, look, full disclosure, I was not an SG-1 fan. Like I said, the only show I ever really watched on sci-fi was The Expanse. Oh, you know what? No, I also watched Z Nation because of Zane in this. I was never... Like, I liked Stargate, the movie, but when it came to the sci-fi shows, I never watched any. And I'll be honest with you, this was number. Hold on, where was this on my list? This was number. Oh, sorry, this was number 10. Actually, no, sorry, number 9. I switched a couple of things, so
okay.
This was number 9 on my list, and it kind of just fell there. It's not like I placed it there. It was kind of like, I got to squeeze it somewhere, so I guess this is where it goes. To me, like, the beginning was very silly. The beginning was very, very silly, and I had to get past that and the initial conversations in the mess hall in order for me to get into the episode. But once I got through it, I was like, oh, okay, you know what? I can kind of see why people like this show. Because other than this, I think I've only ever seen maybe 2 other episodes of SG-1. So yeah, it was kind of like, all right, well, I can see why people like this, but again, the first 10 minutes out of a 42-minute episode, I'm like, oh God, like this is bad. Why do people like this again? And then, like I said, once I got over past the first act, then I was like, oh, okay, you know what? I think I kind of get it. All right, I get it now. So, yeah, but just that, it was one of those things where, you can't unsee the campiness and it's like they're trying to be serious about it, but it's an early '90s sci-fi television show, and
Late
like,
90s.
Yeah.
really?
It's
Yeah,
what
actually, this
it's
one
what
came
we-
out in 2001, actually.
What?
Yes.
Oh my god!
it's what we call Canadian. It's very
Yes.
Canadian.
Okay, okay.
Maybe I just call it that. I don't
See,
know.
Dan, I disagree. I think it's very clearly late 90s. I've watched early 90s. They're way cheesier than this.
Oh god! I mean, listen. There was so much Velveeta sprinkled on there. It was just, like I said, especially the beginning. Like, what are they doing? What? I'm like when and I forget what the doctor's name, but I guess the one that's supposed to be
Daniel Jackson?
yeah, with the one with the glasses.
Yeah.
Daniel Jackson.
Yeah, in the beginning when he's seeing the guy pressing all these buttons, he's like, oh, what are you doing? Like, dude, he's doing some sinister shit. You don't see what's going on? Okay? There's not supposed to be lightning at the fucking Stargate.
Look, that's Daniel Jackson's job in the show. Ask the questions and get them into trouble. Not paying enough attention.
Oh god!
All right.
Yeah, so I had to get past that. If I didn't get past that, plus the conversation at the in the mess hall in the beginning, then yeah, if I didn't power through that, this would have been way lower on the list.
But
But that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, but that's just exactly. All right, so this I would have named this next as well, but it was number 8 on my list, and it's funny. I seem to only have it one slot higher than Don, but I liked it way better than he did. So this I believe is the highest rated episode of Stargate SG-1 on IMDb. And when I did my personal top 10 countdown of Stargate SG-1, this was my number 2. And I had comments on that video saying, how dare you not put it at number 1? But anyway,
What?
so,
Oh my god!
yeah,
Okay.
because look, I think you may think this might be an out of context situation. I think if you've seen the whole show in context, you can see how this works better because it's one of the truest forms of character piece that the show has ever done, and it uses humor. Like the thing about the show is it's always a bit tongue in cheek, and it's uses the sarcastic humor, which is usually the highlight of it. And I think this is one of the
face
episodes
of a crazy person.
that uses
Bad example.
that uses humor the best. Like, yeah, there's like all these classic moments, like the whole thing where he like draws a smiley face with ketchup mustard. I'm going wacko! Like that was amazing. Absolutely love that stuff, and how he's like playing golf and you're like, sir, in the middle of a backswing. Like this is definitely I think had the most fun with the time loop genre. Let me put it that way. And I had the character piece with this. So I can understand why Darren would watch this to wash out the bad taste of a lesser time loop story, because this is just pure fun.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Also, another one where from Malazzi has to learn another language in order for it to solve the problem. Instead of French from Dark Matter, he had to learn this ancient Latin or the language of the ancients in order to push this. And I also love the bit as he's doing the work. They're slowly learning the other skills like juggling and things like that. Sadly, his knowledge of the ancients' language completely unreferenced after this episode.
Oh, of course. But, I gotta be honest, like, the only reason why this didn't land higher to me, because I was considering this for my top 5, and the only reason it didn't quite make it is because of, not the beginning, but the ending. I thought the ending was a bit cheeseball with the dude, oh, I want to bring back my wife, and they just talk him out of it. I'm like, that's kind of a sappy way to end this very fun episode. But other than that, yeah,
very much an SG's one ballpark, though, right there.
Sure,
it's
absolutely. Yeah. All right, so do you want to get into it? So, actually, Darren, would you do the honors of recounting our top 20?
I would be honored to do the honors. Okay, starting with the worst to the so far the best. Starting at number 20, we have Before I Fall. Number 19, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad from Star Trek Discovery. Also donated STD. No reason to make a further comment than that. Number 18, Happy Death Day. Number 17, Deja Vu from The Outer Limits. Number 16, Here We Go Again from Legends of Tomorrow. Number 15, And Those We Left Behind from Fringe. Number 14 was The Endless. Number 13, Arc, ARQ from Netflix. Number 12, Source Code. Number 11, Russian Doll. Number 10, All the Time in the World. From number 9, Cause and Effect from Stargate, Star Trek, Next Generation. Number 8, Boss Level. Number 7, Palm Springs. Number 6, As I Have Always Been from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And of course, we just talked about our number 5 entry, Window of Opportunity from Stargate SG-1.
All right, so here I'm going to go with the random generator to see who gets to go next time. So, of course, Darrin will be 1, Don will be 2, I will be 3. And we come up with 2, so that's Don. Don, you get to name our number 4.
Okay, so number 4 here. Number 4 was number 8 on the list, and it's funny because on my list, and it's funny because this was super late entry, latest entry, thanks to a last minute audible from our host, Mr. Mark from Enchantment of Eternity himself, and that is Run, Lola Run. So this was not a movie that I was familiar with at all. I had never seen or heard of it, and the fact that it was in German really kind of
Scheiße! Oh, sorry.
Really, honestly speaking, there are times when I really like watching foreign films with subtitles because sometimes it makes it even more hilarious. Like if it's already supposed to be a comedy, it makes it even more hilarious reading the subtitles but hearing the native language. Now this wasn't necessarily a comedy, but I did think that it was interesting. It was a little difficult for me to follow at times, only because just having to always concentrate on the translations and trying to keep up. So I think I might need to watch it one more time just to kind of be able to to follow it a little better. But overall, I think it was a good use of the trope. And yeah, I think compared to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, this was a good call for an audible.
All right, so when I first decided to add this to my list or to the collective list, I was like, holy shit, this might take over as my number 1. But when I watched, I was like, oh, not quite number 1. I put it at number 3, I believe, is where it landed. So I first saw this movie in the movie theater when it came out. It took a while for it. When I was visiting New Zealand in 1999. So it came out in 98. So it was but it was when it hit the movie theaters there. And I loved it. I considered it one of my favorite films for a long time. I bought it on VHS. It has been a while since I'd seen it. It had that kinetic energy in the editing and the music, which really got me pumping. I think the whole thing works. It is a very German film. Like the first time I saw it, I'm like, it made me think of that Saturday Night Live sketch of Sprockets. This is a time on Sprockets when we dance. Dun, dun, dun. It's an extremely German film, like the way it's really sort of tries to be really artsy. But I think it works for the most part. Like I love it makes it unique and original. And sometimes they do get into pretentious land, which is why I didn't end up at my number one. Especially that opening scene where they had all those people doing and all these quotes like face up, and I was like, come on guys, you're not like making poetry here, you're not making like a classical Shakespearean piece. This is a silly techno movie. But I think I love the detail, the intricacies, and this is why it's like at first I didn't think of it as a time loop. It's almost like alternate scenarios, but it is kind of a time loop. There are some suggestions that she is retaining some events from previous loops, and there's only 3 loops, which makes it the shortest out of any entry on the list. But I love how just the fact that each of the 3 loops, she goes at a different speed running down the stairs, and that like cascades to affect the outcome of everyone's lives so drastically. And that's such a really interesting thought experiment, and I love the way it plays out. And again, the style is amazing, and I love it. So yeah, this is top 3 for me, number 3. But anyway, Darren.
Yeah, this was number 5. This instantly went to number 5 on my list as soon as you mentioned it. It had no problem being there. I love this movie. I saw it very early on. The music is astounding. In fact, I love the music so much, I choreographed a fight to running one as my master's thesis for theatrical combat. It's an astounding piece. Tom Tykwer directs. He does the music as well. Also did Pitch Black and the music to that as well. This is my first introduction to Franca Potente, who was astounding, and I was really bummed that she never really made the crossover that she sort of deserved. I love everything about this movie. I watched this so many times over and over again. I love the layering it. I love the sort of chaotic effect as different things start to change and that snowballs into different directions. There is a lot of symbolism. There's religious and family symbolism in there. You're right. It's super German in many ways. It's powerful. It's kinetic. It runs. It's got so much energy. It is a blast from beginning to end. And I was really, really stoked when you put this on the list. Otherwise, you pretty much said everything else about it. So, yeah, if you haven't seen Run, Lola Run or Lola Run in its original German, see it. Enjoy it. It's freaking astounding. And the music rocks. Aha.
Yeah, the music is amazing. All right, so okay, we got top 3. So it's Darren will be 1, I will be 2. Let's do the random. Hold on, give me a second. All right, and it's going to be 2. So I'm going to go next and name our number 3, and I'm pretty damn sure I'm going to blow both of your number 1s with this one. This was a really, really hard movie for me to place because I had to struggle. I was struggling with nostalgia, not to try to let my nostalgia glasses get the better of me, and struggling with how everyone considers this a classic, which part of my natural instinct is to fight against that, but I don't want to be like too contrarian on the other side. Anyway, it's Groundhog's Day. Groundhog's Day, which was number 7 on my list. So yeah, I wanted to sort of try to judge it as a movie on its own right, and I had to realize that it was brilliantly constructed. Like the character journey that Phil Connors go through is amazing. The comedy works. So originally I put this like number 10, but I was like, no, that's not being fair. I'm being a bit too contrarian. Just because I'm sick of people calling every time loop thing it's Groundhog Day, that really pisses me off. But when I looked at it, I was like, no, this. So then I moved it up to like number 4. But then I was like, wait, it's like there are some. I can't let the nostalgia get the better of me. There are some flaws, particularly. I don't think the romance in this movie works, and that's what the whole movie hinges on, is him forming this romance. Well, I liked how they do it, because how they do it is he has to learn to stop trying to woo her, because that never works. He has to just like forget about her and become a better person himself, and that's how he wins her over. But I think these characters have no chemistry whatsoever, and I don't think they deserve to be together, and I did not buy the romances. So the scenes in the middle of the film where he's trying to win her over and over again was a real slog for me to get through, to be frank. I thought it really dragged in that middle, and towards the end where he becomes this like superhero saving kids falling out of trees, like that was a bit too silly for me. But as I said, everything else, like the comedy, of course, and the character growth and all that works, and it's a classic for a reason, I will acknowledge. But just I wanted to sort of objectively in my try not to let the nostalgia get the better of me. So that's just where I ranked it. Anyway,
I'm perfectly fine with you putting out where it is. It was my number 2, but most importantly, this means that my number 1 will be number 1 where it's supposed to be, which we will get to. But look, there's a reason why this hit so much. This became such a point, why this is referred to in so many other episodes that use the time loop, because this is one of the first that it's introduced to American audiences, and it was a frickin' home run. The just the construction, the arc, it set the rules that every other time loop follows, from the refusal to the boredom to the excitement to the wanting to kill themselves to finally learning a skill to the eventual usual moralistic change and everything. Sure, there may be some chemistry issues in it, but its construction is awesome. Now, the downside for this film also, it was the last pairing up of Murray and Ramis. This splintered their friendship, because Murray wanted the more serious, straightforward take, and Harold Ramis wanted the more comedy version that we ended up getting. So in some ways, the two of them fighting made, I think, a better film than what either one of them maybe wanted to do initially. I think that compromise ended up working. It's a bummer that this basically kept the two of them talking until right before Harold Ramis's death. One of the reasons we never got a Ghostbusters 3, among many other problems that that has. But yeah, I think it deserves to be respected on the list. I think what it does and how it establishes what so many people follow afterwards deserves it to be higher up on the list, but it does not deserve to be number 1. Something else does. Don, what's your take on Groundhog Day?
Blasphemy. Double blasphemy. Does not deserve to be number 1, sir. How dare you?
No.
Okay. Look, even though it might not reach the level of number 1, to say that it does not deserve to be number 1. How dare you, sir? Dare you? Anyway, listen, this is the movie that started it all for us here in America, right? It's to the point where time loop and Groundhog Day are pretty much synonymous at this point. Where how many times has that been referenced in other movies and television that we've mentioned on this list? And think about how many times it's probably been mentioned in things having to do nothing with time loops at all, right? So, look, Bill Murray. It's Bill Murray. How could you not like Bill Murray, right? Yeah, it's sad that this is the movie that ended the friendship between him and Harold Ramis. But I mean, look, this and Scrooged were two of my favorite Bill Murray performances. During this kind of time period for him. So, I mean, listen, like I said, this is the thing that kind of really introduced, the concept of doing something with time loops to a general audience here in the States. And it was my number one because sometimes the originals do it the best. And for me, when I think about other movies or TV shows on this list, I just couldn't think of anything that really topped it. There might have been things there might have been other properties that have done interesting things with time loops, but I don't think that that there's anything that's you're gonna point out that's gonna be like, man, you know what? This basically washes Groundhog Day and stomps it into the ground. And so that's why, like, for me, it was number one, because I don't think that anything, like I said, even if you might have had other interesting concepts, I don't think that anything just came through and was just like, yeah, Groundhog Day, take it or leave it. This is the thing that you should be watching instead of that. So that's my perspective on it.
Well, I wouldn't say there's anything that stomps Groundhog's Day into the ground, but there are 6 things I think were better.
Oh yeah, I think there might, I'm willing to admit that there might be other movies that were more interesting, but in terms of, like, if you gave me, you can only watch one time loop movie or one time loop thing ever again, I'm gonna go with Groundhog Day.
Well, I mean, you'd be wrong, but that's okay. We can all make poor choices, Don. We can all do that.
Darrin, stop telling people that they're wrong.
I'm very sorry.
And especially when you're so wrong about Russian Doll. Anyway.
According to the chat as well, I am very wrong. I'm definitely in the minority on that one. So
Darrin, you get to name our number 2 and our number 1, but I would ask to start with the number 2 and everyone refrain from speaking of the number 1 until we get to it. So let's give number 2 its due. So what is our number 2?
Our number 2 is from the early days kind of our time loop. So I just want to get to my notes, make sure that I've got some actual good notes here for it. And that is the X-Files episode Monday, taking the trope and moving it to the next level. This is a rare case of a primary single looper with the rare case of not being a main cast member. Repeating the day her boyfriend robs and blows up a bank, it's a mid-journey start for Pam trying to repeatedly change history. But we only see a few examples of it, as the episode is still from Mulder and Scully's perspective. The loops exhibit variations, allowing for great talks of déjà vu, fate, and what if we could live it all over again? Would we or could we do things differently? The episode culminates in Mulder slowly realizing something is wrong, and after a conversation with Pam, the cluesman, the attempts to fix it, implants himself a suggestion for the next loop. The fact that it is the believer in the show that is able to make the loop and make the change is astounding. It's another episode where you don't need to know anything about the show. It stands perfectly on its own. Again, it takes the idea and the trope and takes it from a different perspective. It introduces chaos and randomness into the show. especially by the events beginning of a waterbed, which refers to an episode one or two before this when he gets the waterbed. Again, another one of those small things that aren't really necessary. Yes, we see Mulder's bedroom. I think it's the first time we do see Mulder's bedroom in the show. It's just beautifully done. The acting is incredible. The intense, the fact that Pam is telling, I've tried this before, kind of like in Palm Springs. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and you believe her. So you don't need to see it. It's phenomenally well done. This is X-Files at its best.
All right, Don, your thoughts on the X-Files episode Monday?
I mean, well, listen, you know what? I'm not mad at where it landed at all. Listen, X-Files was a favorite show of mine during the original run. I wish they could have kept up the quality when they brought it back the first and the second time. And yeah, like this was number 6 on my list, but I'm not mad at the placement at all. You know, again, classic Mulder and Scully, your classic tale of the week, you know, and the fact, and I'm sorry, my cat is Lucky, god damn it, boy. Yeah, so look, like I said, I'm not mad at the placement at all. You know, I love X-Files, like the first, 3 or 4 seasons. And it's funny because me and a couple of my friends at school during the time, I was Skinner, and they were Mulder and Scully. So I mean, like that just goes to show you how into it we were. Why I wound up being Skinner, I have no idea. But hey, I yeah, but
yeah, that's a real head scratcher how that happened.
I didn't have a bald head back. Yeah. Right? I had a full head of hair. I had a full head of hair. Hey, no, that's the reason at all. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, listen. Again, your classic X-Files story, and I mean, listen, there's not much bad you can say about it. The other stuff that made it higher on the list, for me, I mean, yeah, what made it higher on the list for me was Cause and Effect, because I'm a Trekkie, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because Agent, Outer Limits, Déjà Vu, and I already told you I was drunk and and it was just absolute. I spent a lot of time laughing and having so much fun with that episode. Groundhog Day was my number one. We already know what the number one is gonna be, and I'm actually not surprised. So yeah, I'll let you take it.
All right, so this was number 4 on my list, and I am shocked that it made it this high. I didn't know everyone else agreed with it. I thought I would be a loner and the only person who loves this episode. So I'm glad to see that so many people recognize this as a masterpiece. Now, I did not see this episode when it first came out. About maybe 8-7 years ago, I did an entire watch through of the X-Files. And I think the X-Files as a show is a very, very mixed bag for me. I think half of the show sucks and the other half is amazing. So it's like there's such polarizing. It was actually really hard to binge watch. It wasn't made for binge watching. There was a lot of really crap episodes I had to sit through, but they were rewarded with a lot of really amazing episodes. So it was really half and half. And this was, when I did my top 10 of the X-Files, this was in my top 5 episodes of the X-Files. It's definitely one of my favorites. Actually, this is from season 6, which is the season when they moved to Los Angeles. They moved from filming from Vancouver to Los Angeles, and it's my favorite season of the X-Files, even though it got more sort of Hollywoodified. And it's mainly for episodes like this. I think this is a great way to play with the time loop genre. Like Darrin mentioned, that not the main character was the one who was experiencing this, but it's combined like the Groundhog's Day of one character is reliving the events over and over again with the cause and effect. All the characters are starting to bleed through the more they do it over and over again, which was a very interesting concept. And I love that. I loved how the woman kind of gave up at one stage, but Mulder was starting to pick up on it on himself, and that was giving her hope, and that the ending solution to end the time loop was that she had to die to end her suffering, because it shows how being stuck in the time loop, I think more effectively even than Palm Springs, how miserable it is, and how it's basically just suffering in the misery beyond belief. And she was basically put out of her misery so that everyone else could move forward. It's very, very powerful stuff. And of course, I think the chemistry between the main characters, Mulder and Scully, worked really, really good in this episode, which I think is indicative of season 6, which I do think is the best season. But anyway,
what was Pam's quote in it? "This is hell, only I'm the only one that knows it." I think was just awesome. Yeah, a super creepy and really, the chemistry on that, just an excellent episode. Which leads us to our number 1. Now let's do one last countdown before we reveal our number 1, folks, which if you had the list, you could probably already figure out. Number 20, Before I Fall. Number 19, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad from Star Trek Discovery. Number 18, Happy Death Day. Number 17, Déjà Vu from The Outer Limits. Number 16, Here We Go Again from Legends of Tomorrow. Number 15 is And Those We Left Behind from Fringe. Number 14, The Endless. Number 13, Arc, ARQ. Number 12, Source Code. And number 11, Russian Doll. We start off the top 10 with All the Time in the World from Dark Matter. We have Cause and Effect from Star Trek The Next Generation at number 9. Number 8 gives us Boss Level. Number 7 is Palm Springs. Hey, 2 Hulu films back to back. Number 6 is As I Have Always Been from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Number 5, Window of Opportunity from Stargate SG-1. Number 4 is Run, Lola, Run. Number 3 is Groundhog Day. Number 2 is Monday from the X-Files. And the number 1 time loop movie from our combined list, it's Tom Cruise. It's Emily Blunt. Yeah, it was called Edge of Tomorrow, but we all call it Live, Die, Repeat.
I hate that title. I prefer Edge of Tomorrow.
Most everyone else calls it that.
Well, I will fight anyone on that one. Edge of Tomorrow is a great title. Everyone's wrong. Anyway, sorry.
Well, listen, the original title was All You Need Is Kill, right?
Yes,
that's
which
would be based off.
Awesome, which they could have, but of course it's America. Look, this was my number 1. This lives exactly where it is supposed to be. This is my wife's favorite film at the moment. Whenever anything is going on, cleaning stuff, this is the background movie. Tom Cruise has an awesome arc in this, from an annoying bastard you can't wait to get messed up to a hardened veteran. You get to see it. Emily Blunt. Do I have to say anything more? This is Emily Blunt at her Emily Bluntest. She is awesome. She is beautiful. They've got a great arc. It is a contained story. It has an explanation of what's happening. It's funny. It's dramatic. It gets Tom Cruise getting the crap beat out of him, run over by cars, hit by things, which you never get to see Tom Cruise willingly put himself into ridiculous-looking situations like that. It was not a hit when it first came out. It became a hit as more and more people saw it afterwards. It will have a sequel coming up at some point. And I think it's how you take a trope and make it better. It's how you build on it on every level, from an explanation to character work to action to sci-fi. To me, the film's got everything, and it should be number one.
Listen,
See, I just quieted everyone up. No, sorry.
I'm not mad at it being number one. It was literally number two on my list right after Groundhog Day. So, but I'd still take umbrage with the fact that you said that Groundhog Day didn't deserve.
That's because this one deserves to be number one. It's Groundhog Day better. But that's me. Okay, that's fair. Go on. I'll be quiet.
Yeah. I really love this movie. I was one of the people who didn't see it in the movie theaters when it came out. I saw it actually at this place that's like a arcade slash like diner, and I was like, wow, this movie is amazing. Why did I not go see it in the movie theater? Because I know a lot of people, I'm trying to remember, did this come out before Oblivion or after Oblivion? Because I know these two movies after Oblivion. All right, so yeah, I think this was, they said that this kind of suffered because of the marketing and people thought that it was going to be like Oblivion.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, how could you think that when I don't know. To me, you saw enough of the movie, or not enough of the movie, but enough of the premise to know that it wasn't going to be like Oblivion. But I don't know. I think at the time I just wasn't. I don't know. I might just been on my. I don't feel like going to movies right now kind of kick. So, but when I saw it, I was like, oh wow. So I immediately purchased it on Blu-ray, 3D Blu-ray. Yeah, 3D Blu-ray, and then when I went to go watch it, my damn 3D TV went out on me. So I have a 3D Blu-ray that I cannot watch because I no longer have a 3D TV. But yeah, still great movie.
Okay, so this was also number one on my list, which surprised me. I didn't expect it to land at number one. And as I said, basically my whole top five, I was shuffling back and forth. And at one stage, any of them were at number one. What was my top five? Edge of Tomorrow, Russian Doll, Run Lola Run, Monday, and Boss Level, if you believe, was even at number one at one stage. But ultimately, after giving it a lot of thought, and again, it's kind of tenuous, I decided this is where it landed, and I'm surprised because I think I remember this movie fondly, but rewatching it, I was just forgotten just how good it was. I think it uses the time loop thing in a very unique way. It does a really great Tom Cruise's character journey. Say what you will about the actor. I know I've heard so many people, some in the chat, and I've heard other people say that they didn't like the movie or wouldn't watch it because of they don't like Tom Cruise. But say what you will about him, he does a good job in this movie, and the character arc that he has is absolutely amazing, and I love how they use the time loop too. I feel the connection between the journey that he goes through from being this scummy PR guy that doesn't want to be in battle and is a coward to being this war hero who basically wins the war for him. It was really well told. And again, Emily Blunt, I would argue her most Emily Bluntness was A Quiet Place, but this comes in second. And no, but she was completely awesome in this film, and the relationship they had Also, I remember at the time I was huge into Game of Thrones. There's so many like cameos from Game of Thrones guest actors. I kept singing him like a Locke from season 3, and that was that the fucking fool. What's his name again? Oh God, it's been a long time. But anyway, the fool that poisoned that helped Sansa when Joffrey died. Oh God, what's his name? Dantos, yeah. He was in it. He was like screaming at the thing, oh, we made it, and a big ship crashes on him. Anyway, so that I was actually blown away. I didn't expect this to be my number 1, but after watching it, I was like, wow, this is a great film. And it's like you could say this is just another alien invasion, but I watched this. And then a couple days later, I watched the new movie that just came out with Chris Pratt, Tomorrow War, and I'm like, God, that sucks. Like the comparison, like that Tomorrow War that makes no sense, and that's such a shit cliche of aliens invading. Whereas this goes beyond your alien invasion film. This is not Independence Day. This is not your stereotypical alien invasion. It's a great character story that uses, and it's exciting and so suspenseful throughout. I was on edge. The only drawback that almost had me take it away from number 1 is they need some more fucking lighting, and that ending. The cinematography was not bad. I could not see a damn thing in that final thing. But other than that, it was I love this film, and so it landed on my number 1. And by the way, Darren, Groundhog's Day done right was Palm Springs, in my opinion. Anyway,
that is totally fair. That is totally fair. God, I love this movie. I may end up rewatching it again. You're right, because it just does have a great arc. And the bit when he starts off with this, he can't get on, he doesn't know how to load anything, and no one's going to top. And at the end, there's like, where's your helmet? Gets in my way. Now give me all this extra stuff and an extra battery and load it. You can see the difference from that character to that character, that these are different people, that the weight of the experience has changed. And I know a lot of people don't like Tom Cruise, and that's fair. But the guy's frickin' knows his work. He does.
And by the way, I think this is the 3rd time we included Edge of Tomorrow in one of these top 20 collective lists. We did like comic book movies way back when with Don and Josh from Geeksiders, and then we did a time travel, which I believe Alyssa was in that with us, and she didn't care much for the movie and totally blew it. So this is the first time it made number 1, so I think it does deserve it.
Excellent. So that's it. That's our list. I think the chat seems to be mostly with us, more with you guys than with me, but that's okay. That's fine. I get it. I'll finish Russian Doll.
Listen, you don't disrespect Bill Murray by saying that. Doesn't deserve. Okay, you don't do that.
Okay, maybe I should just say something else was more deserving. I guess. Look, man, I'm getting clicks here. We gotta be emotional. That's how we get clicks, right?
So Cardinal Doomsday says that on the top list, on the top level here, we're a bit loopy, and we are. We turning on these loops, we are quite loopy, and Cardinal Doomsday. The answer to that question is Russian Doll worth watching? I would say yes. So several other people in the chat would say yes. Don and Darren apparently would say no, but yeah.
Look, if you're into it by the end of the 2nd episode, then it's for you. If by then you start pulling off, then maybe not so much. And again, they're short. That's only a half-hour episode, so it's not a huge investment of your time.
Well, that's what I would say, Darren. If you're not hooked by now, then watching the end is not going to make you think any better of it. But I was hooked immediately. But that's just me. Anyway, let's go ahead and end this now. We've been here for 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I want to thank everyone who joined us, even if they're not still here, who floated in the chat. Alyssa, Rob, Cardinal Doomsday, Allison. There's a few other people who floated in and out. Thank you all for contributing. It's great to see you and everyone else who's watching, and those who are watching in the archives. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. And of course, thank you to my special guests. I love doing these things. We should do them more often. Thanks so much for watching, taking all the time to watch these 20 pieces. So first, we'll say our goodbyes. Don, we'll start with you.
All right. First off, Mark, Darrin, thank you for having me. This actually kind of got postponed because I had internet issues, and then I was on vacation for a week as well. So thank you for allowing me to be here even with all the delays. Interesting experience as always. Can't wait to do this again with whatever the next thing is going to be. You guys can find me mostly here guesting on either one of these guys' channels sooner or later. And I'll get to doing Game of Thrones videos again, for House of the Dragon or something like that, or something and something. But if you want to follow me on social media, you can catch me at Willi on Instagram and also on Twitter. That's IDONWILLI. I don't post that much. Maybe I should start doing some of that too. But listen, again, like I said, Mark, thank you for having me, and great experience as always. So I guess Mr. Darrin, take it away.
This was a blast, Mark. I was really looking forward to doing this. I would love to do some more. I like these little countdowns. I like to sort of get a chance to sort of share and see where everybody comes in. And the fact that in a lot of ways, we're all kind of on the same lines. There's just little differences, some from personal or whether we're familiar with their show or not. So it's always interesting to see how these things sort of break down. So total blast tonight. Thank you so much. Normally, you can catch me over on my channel on D's Reviews. We just finished up our big Loki show. We're taking a little break right now, but we do have some Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4 discussions that will be coming up eventually. And then, of course, we've got some more Marvel shows that will be coming up later this year, which we will also cover, though I'm not sure what I'm going to do with What If. I have to see kind of how that plays out. But I think I might be talking with this guy over here, so you might catch me right here doing all that. Anyway, and that's it. You can also catch me on Twitter and Instagram at Darrin Jakes. Otherwise, catch me here sometime soon.
Or over at Alyssa's channel.
Or at Alyssa's channel, yes. Yeah. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. All right. So if you're finding me for the first time, my name's Mark at Channel's Enchantment of Eternity. At the moment, I'm going through and reviewing random Star Trek episodes because, hey, we're not a huge Star Trek fan. And I'm doing a rewatch season reviews of Better Call Saul, going through the whole show. I'm up to season 3. And then next month, I'm going to start watching for the very first time and reviewing Star Wars, Clone Wars. So that's going to be very interesting. And also when Lower Decks comes out later this month, or next month, August, whatever, I will be reviewing every episode of Star Trek Lower Decks as well. So be sure to check me out for that. And thanks everyone for joining. And we'll see you next time when Loop restarts.